but I think the development of full artificial intelligence would spell the end of the human race.
It's a flying object, and we don't know what it is. I would hope somebody is checking it out.
It was a rocket or whatever, but incredibly fast, opposite direction. It was too fast to be an airplane.
I'm glad the Pentagon is looking at this, because if it poses a threat, I want them on top of it.
Well, the craft generates its own gravitational field.
You said there's lights in the sky?
The internet has become the command center for criminals and terrorists.
911, what's your emergency? I need help, please help me!
Aliens won't let it happen. You know, that's what we're instructed to say.
Roswell, Area 51. Alien kept deep under the ground.
1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1, 6, 3, 2, 9, 7.
Media doesn't have your best interest in mind. The government is self-serving. You're here for a reason. You're listening to Troubled Minds Radio. Broadcasting live from a secret bunker just off the extraterrestrial highway. Somewhere in the desert sands outside of Las Vegas. From somewhere in space-time, loosely labeled Generation X on planet Earth. And asking questions of you in earnest into the digital darkness. Good evening and welcome to Troubled Minds Radio. I'm your host, Michael Strange, and hello to all of you who may also have troubled minds. What's going on, guys? It is Monday night, which is one of the nights we get together and talk about all the things we're not allowed to talk about. We do it Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific. What are those things, you may wonder? Aliens, conspiracy, the paranormal, the government, academia, the 24-hour news cycle, propaganda, the general feeling that we live in the upside down. Whoa, God, got a doozy for you tonight. Sometimes I struggle with ideas. It's a normal human thing, and it's hard to be novel and be fun and be interesting and not too serious, but not too frivolous. And I mean, it's kind of hard to walk those sorts of lines. Tonight, not so. Tonight came like a bolt of blue. The muses were smiling on me tonight because I tell you what, I read one article and this entire idea just went right through my head like a freight train. I was like, oh, OMG, maybe this is what we've been missing for a very long time. The idea we'll get into the idea, but the idea that maybe folklore is real. And a lot of those creatures in the days of yore actually have some sort of historic basis with some sort of controlling mechanism of cryptids and folklore monsters. That's what's on my mind tonight. There's your little teaser as we get going. As you know, this is no truth to be had here. Like I said, I know it's frustrating. The reason I'm saying this now is because I can't remember the name. I can't remember all the names. But thank you for the smart comments and the people listening to the show and leaving a great feedback. But great feedback recently was, man, I just feel like this guy's always backtracking and doing disclaimers on everything, and I get it. It is a little exhausting, but it is what you have to do to differentiate between theories, sort of massively speculative theories, and direct claims of things. And so that's why I do it. And I think it's an important aspect of part of this. And so my apologies, but these are only ideas. These are only concepts, sort of, I call it New Age philosophy, and I'm not even sure if that's real or not, or I made it up, or I don't really care. It's basically things I'm into, throwing them in a blender and trying to come up with new ideas, and that's that. Tonight, though, like I said, Bolt of Blue. This one, the inspiration came fast and furious. So as you know, these ideas are just collective thoughts. These are us talking to each other, regular people talking about extraordinary things. There is no truth to be found here, but we are doing this to include you because this is the most interactive radio show in the known multiverse. And what I mean by that, of course, is we're streaming at all the places. I'm reading your chat, trying to incorporate your ideas into the show as we go. And don't discount that fact, because sometimes we'll get a comment or two that turns the show sideways and takes it a completely different direction because it's better than what I had planned. So just keep the thoughtful chat coming. I appreciate it. Because we're streaming in all the places you would expect. That's, of course, going to be YouTube, Rockfin, Rumble, Twitter, and Twitch. Of course, we're broadcasting live on the Troubled Minds Radio Network. That's digital radio, KUAP Digital Broadcasting. And that's the deal. Of course, we are also taking your phone calls at 702 957-1037. That's 702-957-1037. You can find the phone number, the Discord link, all the things, social media, the podcast, everything you need, the merch store. Everything's at troubledminds.org. That's the official website. Everything is there, and that's what's going on. All right, let's get to it. Let's get to this bizarre idea. This is a good one. I'm a little giddy. It's hard to come up with novel, interesting Halloween ideas. But let us begin here. Let us begin with this IFL Science article that was published this spanking 12 hours ago. Oops. Yeah. Let's do not that. Let's do this. Function F9. Okay. So the headline is this: How a brain parasite turns ants into zombies that hide from the sunlight. You see where I'm going with this? All it took was a headline, and I went, yes! The ants' altered behavior makes them more likely to be eaten by grazing animals at dawn and dusk. All right? Now, listen to this. There are few things more sinister than a parasite that hijacks the brains of infected ants and effectively turns them into zombies. But new research has shown that these tiny worms are even more sophisticated than we give them credit for, altering the behavior of their unwitting hosts in response to temperature to maximize their chances of survival. A parasite's goal is to exploit other species so that it can progress its own life cycle by any means necessary. Some of our most feared human diseases, like malaria and sleeping sickness, are caused by parasites. But many other animals and plants have parasitic pests to contend with too. And this is called the lancet liver fluke, is what we're talking about. And let's just go straight to the write-up, because this is where all the good stuff is. So we'll start with ants tonight and parasites. However, when you think about this goes off the rails incredibly quickly, because let's read it from the thing. The lancet liver fluke, a brain parasite, has recently emerged as a master manipulator of ant behavior, according to a groundbreaking study linked down below. This cunning parasite takes over the neural circuitry of infected ants, compelling them to ascend the peaks of grass blades and latch on. The purpose? To make these ants easy prey for grazing animals, thereby completing the parasite's life cycle in a new host. Yes, this is no mere puppetry. It's a calculated strategy that shifts with the temperature. The infected ants, it seems, are not left to bake in the noon sun. They climb down to find shade when the solar rays intensify, resuming their perilous perch during the cooler morning and evening hours. This temperature-responsive behavior optimizes the parasite's chances of entering a grazing animal, showcasing the intricate and nuanced nature of host-parasite interactions that govern ecosystems. Oh, seems fine. This is fine. And notice in the other ways we talk about this, specifically like toxoplasmosis, Toxoplasma gondii. We've talked about that a few times on this show, and how it changes the behavior of humans to be more more risk averse and to just go for it and wild stuff. Okay, which again they say that part of that is it's the Brazilian soccer gene, right? They say that shout out to Mighty Rohan for pointing that out a ways back. But basically, like the Brazilian soccer gene is not gene, but this parasite, basically toxoplasmosis. They suggest it makes people more averse to risk taking, and many people that ride motorcycles, they say, are infected with the toxoplasmosis. Now, and of course, the Brazilian soccer player. The reason why you say this, or why this is a thing, is because the population of Brazil has a massive percentage of people that have this toxoplasmosis. And is it deadly? No, of course not. It just makes people sort of able to take risks, massive, major, crazy risks that they wouldn't normally take. And I did a whole show on that in the past where we talked about maybe the elites of the world are the way they are because they're infected by toxoplasmosis or something similar that maybe is unquantified as of yet. But and also the term ivermectin came up as an anti-parasitic, and maybe that's why there was the big war on ivermectin. You remember all that. In any case, that's just that's an aside here, and we don't have to talk about that directly, but fascinating as hell. So in this case, though, if we're talking about this in terms of parasites and and back to that. Sorry, I didn't finish my thought. Back to the Brazilian soccer player. So they say that on the soccer field, there's the ball's traveling super fast with these professional athletes, and they kick the ball really hard, and if you get hit in the face, I mean, it could be concussion, it could be serious brain damage. It might even kill you if you get kicked like directly from a pro soccer player. Kicking the ball straight into your face as hard as possible could be very, very bad. And so when people are on the field, or the pitch, I guess it's called, pardon me and my ignorance of what soccer is, I get the basics, but I'm too old to run that much and without passing out. But my point is that so the risk averse, sort of taking more aggressive angles, not really caring about getting hit with the ball in the face, things like this, right? Like that type of thing is really sort of what makes this, the Brazilian soccer a thing, okay? Because that massive infection of toxoplasmosis in Brazil by population percent. Okay, so now here's the thing. So the study here, that we're now back to this other thing, the Lancet liver fluke. The study uncovers layers of complexity, not just in the Lancet liver fluke's modus operandi, but also in the broader ecological webs we're part of. Could this be a glimpse into the underpinnings of nature, where even parasites adapt in ways that suggest a form of intelligence or intuition? What if these parasites are tapping into a form of ancient wisdom encoded in their DNA, a wisdom that aligns with the rhythms of the earth and sun? To venture into the realm of the esoteric, one might ponder whether the quantum realm plays a role here, subtly influencing the behavior of the parasite and ant alike. If the quantum world can impact the neurons and synapses, could it not also guide the Lancet liver fluke's strategic actions? The idea may be far-fetched, but in a universe replete with mysteries, it's worth contemplating the unfathomable connections that govern the dance of life and death on our planet. It's so good to have an AI that's in sync and knows what's going on and writes like me. And what's up? I see you guys in the chat. I'll say hi when we loop around to the break here. All right. So as we start here now, this is a wild one, because not only do we have these parasitic ants that are being controlled to stay out of the sun, because if they bake in the sun, the ant dies, and of course kills the parasite with it. But the ant is completely controlled by this Lancet liver fluke, is what this is known as. And so they sit there on the top of the grass blade at dawn and dusk, and when the sun comes out, they are controlled to crawl down and seek shade and shelter until the sun goes down again, whereby they climb to the very top again of the grass and sit there and wait to be eaten by a grazing animal. You get it? Wild stuff. Now, okay, consider the unsettling world of parasites, the master manipulators of biology, capable of commandeering their hosts in ways that defy our understanding of agency and free will. The Lancet liver fluke, that tiny puppeteer that turns ants into zombies, is but a single actor on a stage populated by a host of other parasitic virtuosos, each with its own Machiavellian strategies. These parasites hijack the ordinary, bending rules of nature to their whims, rewriting the narrative of life itself. But what if this biological theater extends beyond the realm of ants, rats, and crabs? What if it stretches into the annals of human folklore, explaining the inexplicable creatures that populate our myths and legends? From the bloodthirsty vampire to the shape-shifting werewolf, from the haunting banshee to the elusive Bigfoot, could these beings be manifestations not of supernatural forces, but of parasitic entities that have learned to exploit their hosts in increasingly complex ways? And that's the major question tonight. But this gets spookier. Allow me to continue. Imagine a world where the lines between mythology and microbiology blur, where the werewolf's lunar-triggered transformation is but an evolutionary masterpiece crafted by a parasite sensitive to the moon's gravitational pull. Picture a vampire not as a demon of the night, but as a tragic host, driven to bloodlust by a parasite that requires specific nutrients for its reproductive cycle. The elusive Mothman, the seductive Siren, the malevolent Goblin, each could be a chapter in a biological horror story told through the lens of parasitic manipulation. In this framework, folklore becomes a collection of cautionary tales or cultural archetypes, and more a speculative biology of the uncanny. Here, parasites are the shadowy authors, penning sagas that ripple through ecosystems and human cultures alike. We find ourselves compelled to reconsider not only our relationship with these mythical beings, but also the very boundaries of what we deem natural or supernatural. See what we're getting here. Now, there's a lot to this. This is a dense one, because this is not just, we're going to talk about vampires, of course, tonight, and we're going to talk about werewolves and lycanthropy and, what creates vampires and how does this fit or how does this not fit. But if you look at the world sort of being controlled by these parasitic inventions of biology that have been here for probably millions of years, and we've even speculated, even recently, that these sort of parasites in some capacity are manipulating humanity in some way, wherein free will itself, it becomes a complex riddle of things that can or cannot really be quantified, because we all want to believe we're in control. However, if there's something within all of us that's, let's say, population-wide, that we all have, that's literally creating whatever it does to us, then there'd be no way to find out, would there? I mean, at least until we found out what it was. So I don't really know what's going on here, but there's where we begin. Now, the questions for you guys. Do you think it's possible, number one, that let's say, not just this idea of the zombie ant and this, what's it called, a lancet liver fluke, a brain parasite, is not just part of, let's say, a life cycle of something like the toxoplasmosis, like we talked about with the cat and the rat and all the rest, and the rats become unafraid of the cats anymore, and they become sexually attracted to the smell of cat urine, so they get eaten by the cat. The cat then has the toxoplasmosis inside of it, does what cats do, and craps out the things it eats, and then the rats and the mice catch it again, and then the cycle continues with a new life cycle of the parasite. Well, in this case, the same thing's happening, but it's happening with grazing animals and ants. Now, is it possible then, on a larger scale, that something like this is actually happening to us, to people? Not just people, though. Let's rewind in history and go back to the days of yore, as I always like to say, and consider that maybe, just maybe, the cryptids, or the creatures of folklore themselves, were actually manipulated humans behaving a particular way because of something like this parasite, etc., so on. So what's your theory there? Do you think that tracks at all? It seems really good to me, because how would we really know until we figure out what's exactly happening and how, and especially if it's like a population-wide thing, we'd have to be able to find people that didn't have it to even cross-test and cross-check this and see if maybe we're a peaceful species by default. And maybe the warlike ways of humans and our tribalism and all the things that we struggle with as a human population and society, maybe these things are being manipulated to be just so by things we never considered to be possible. Back to this. So now, whether it's a proto-consciousness operating at the quantum level as suggested previously, or a form of environmental synchromysticism that we've yet to fathom, these parasites, these eerie maestros, invite us to explore the limits of our understanding. They beckon us into a realm where the line between host and invader, myth and reality is not just thin, but almost indiscernible. But tread carefully, for in seeking to unravel these enigmas, one might discover that the puppeteer's strings are more entangled than we ever dared to imagine. Now, Mike, you say, come on now, let's be real about this. If your theory holds any water whatsoever, and again, this is a wild theory. Now, if it holds any water whatsoever, Mike, why are there no vampires and werewolves running around right now? Why can't we just round them up and throw them in a zoo or throw them in jail and say, here's your vampires and here's your werewolves, reacting and acting as specifically vampire and werewolf as people might expect them to? Well, I have a theory about that as well. So let us continue, shall we? One of the most compelling aspects of this parasitic theory is the potential for dormancy, a biological hibernation that could last for centuries. Imagine a scenario where environmental factors, perhaps a change in climate or a scarcity of suitable hosts, trigger the parasites into a dormant state. Encased in a protective cyst or some other biological safeguard, they could lie in wait in soil, water, or even within preserved remains, effectively disappearing from the ecosystem and public consciousness. This could offer a tantalizing explanation for why creatures like werewolves and vampires, so prevalent in folklore, are absent in modern times. The concept of long-term dormancy introduces the element of cyclical horror and awe to our understanding of these mythical beings. What if specific cosmic alignments, or more terrestrial triggers like a sudden rise in available hosts, could awaken these parasites from their centuries-long slumber? Under the right conditions, they could reemerge, not as myths or stories, but as real biological phenomena, reigniting age-old fears and fascinations. The boundary between legend and reality would blur, leaving humanity to grapple with the unsettling notion that some myths are merely truths that have yet to awaken. Now, excuse me. Cough button. Sorry about that. Now, where does the theory sit? I think it kind of takes on another layer of possibility there, and this is why we need to talk about these things, because could it actually be that a lot of these, not even a lot, just pick a handful, that a few of these folklore style monsters that everybody knows about the world over. Once again, remember, a lot of these stories share commonalities, similarities in the entities themselves, regardless of a time frame or even the culture that tells the stories. So is it possible then that these things are actually real things? And let's say not just the supernatural. Let's say humans that have been manipulated by some sort of parasitic organism that turns them into something that seems not human at all. And that becomes the theory tonight. Lots of ways to look at this. We're going to get into a bunch of different ways, including, of course, the main two are going to be vampires and werewolves, but we can look at all manner of things and sort of apply the same template to this idea and consider that maybe, just maybe, some of the things we've seen in the past may at some point reestablish themselves in a modern world. What would it be like if vampires and werewolves begin roaming the streets again. What would it be like if Halloween was not just Halloween itself, but suddenly some sort of catalyst, wherein we awaken entities from ages past? Love to hear your thoughts on this. What do you know about it? And I'm not really sure. However, it seems even almost plausible this time, where we don't have to dive into the maybe juice ocean. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. Is it possible the biology of the uncanny, the cyclical historic horror, is actually real? 702-957-1037. This is Troubled Minds. I'm Michael Strange. Don't go anywhere. More after the break. Be right back. Welcome back to Troubled Minds. I'm your host, Michael Strange, and we're streaming on YouTube, Rockfin, Rumble, Twitter, and Twitch. We are broadcasting live on the Troubled Minds Radio Network. That's KUAP Digital Broadcasting. Tonight, we're talking about a fascinating fusion of folklore and biology. The legendary creatures that have haunted our collective imagination, vampires, werewolves, and even lesser-known cryptids, could be reimagined as hosts in complex parasitic relationships. What do you know about it? These parasites, capable of altering behavior, physiology, and even circadian rhythms, may lie dormant for centuries, explaining their absence in modern times. When viewed through this biological lens, mythical monsters become not mere tales, but potential realities, challenging the boundaries between the natural and the supernatural. So let me ask you, what else? You guys feeling a little Halloween-y? We got, you're going to laugh at me, but I am a little bit, because we have a nice breeze in Vegas, and it's not 110 degrees. It's like 90 out there, which is cool for us. And with a light breeze, 90 with a light breeze is, kind of feeling Halloween-y to me. How about you guys? Are you starting to feel that way in your neck of the woods and all the rest? I'm not sure. There's a meaning with the rest of the theories, but I hope you guys are kind of getting in the mood for Halloween as it's coming. We're gonna. The thing I learned about doing this show over the years, by the way, is that Halloween comes fast. Once you hit September, and we're mid-September now, the time burns by, and you're like, oh, we got a month. But then you count the shows between here and Halloween. It's 5 a week, so that's going to be like 20 shows or something, right? And so, or 20, maybe 25 shows. And so if you miss one, or you kind of don't do any Halloween stuff, it sneaks up on you, and you're like a couple weeks out, and then you only got like 5, 6, 8 shows left or something. It's anyway. It's Halloween's a sneaky one, so I wanted to get ahead of it this year and do it right. And this is, I think, probably a way to do it right. So what do you guys know about this? Back to the idea. Is this, like I said, is this all speculative? This is all just wondering. And look, you can look at this in terms of what this seems like in a longer sense. You want to go full climate change in that regard. Well, what if this type of thing has been buried under like the permafrost forever? And this entity, whatever we're talking about, let's say whatever affects people to be vampires or werewolves or other cryptids even, or let's say infecting dogs or coyotes to be chupacabra, things like this, right? Actual parasitic infestation, that maybe these entities themselves, the parasites, have mostly disappeared from the ecosystem by going dormant in places like, buried in the permafrost. And they're just waiting for us to open them up, to resurrect them, and then maybe we'll have vampires and werewolves walking amongst us again. So I really have no idea. But it is fascinating to consider all these ideas, because this is a wild one. Just mixing, as usual, just a few things and considering, what comes next. So let's read about what comes next. As usual, I'd rather hear from you guys if you have theories on this, if you think it makes some sense, if you think it doesn't. That's okay, because I got tons of stuff to talk about. And of course, I got my AI assistant, GPT-3PO, so I can even conjure some more ideas on the fly here. But do you think it's plausible, is basically the question here. Even in the slightest degree plausible that entities of old, the folklore entities, including, let's say, werewolves and vampires themselves, were possibly real. But not like you think, not the paranormal style of real, not like folklore has suggested, but what if they were humans manipulated by some entity unknown to us as of yet that may be laying dormant out there waiting to return? That's what's on my mind tonight. Whether it's proto-consciousness operating at the quantum level or a form of environmental synchromysticism, I know I read this, but we're going to catch us back up. 702-957-1037. These parasites, these eerie maestros, invite us to explore the limits of understanding. They beckon us into a realm where the line between host and invader, myth and reality is not just thin, but almost indiscernible. But tread carefully, for in seeking to unravel these enigmas, one might discover that the puppeteer's strings are more entangled than we ever dared to imagine. One of the most compelling aspects, so we talked about that, so the long-term dormancy. So let's see, let's start where? Where do we start? How about here? So the concept of parasitic manipulation could extend far beyond the realms of werewolves and vampires, touching upon a whole pantheon of cryptids and mythical monsters. Consider the chupacabra, often described as a reptilian creature that sucks the blood of livestock, or reptilian-ish, depends on who you ask, maybe dog, coyote-like. In any case, could this not be a host organism under the influence of a parasite that craves specific nutrients found in the blood of goats and cows? Or take the legend of the Loch Ness Monster. What if Nessie is not a prehistoric holdover, but rather a host animal undergoing periodic transformations due to a parasite activated by freshwater conditions? Indeed. Even the eerie Mothman, a creature said to haunt the Point Pleasant area of West Virginia in the 1960s, could fit this paradigm. The Mothman's reported ability to fly and its glowing red eyes could be extreme physiological adaptations induced by a parasite. In this case, the parasite might trigger the host's production of bioluminescent compounds, attracting potential mates or even other prey, thereby facilitating its own spread. By applying the lens of parasitism in many cryptids and legendary monsters gain a newfound plausibility. They become not figments of cultural imagination, but potential case studies in the complex ecology of host-parasite interactions. It's a perspective that not only enriches our understanding of these mythical beings, but also invites us to consider the boundaries between the natural and the supernatural, the explicable and the unexplicable. Now, reimagine the vampire in this context, a timeless figure that has haunted the collective human imagination for centuries. Cloaked in an aura of darkness and seduction, this mythical creature has often been relegated to the realm of the supernatural. But what if the vampire's thirst for blood, aversion to sunlight, and enigmatic allure are not the result of a dark curse, but of a parasitic entity that has mastered the art of host manipulation? Imagine a parasite so evolved that it targets specific neural pathways in the human brain to evoke an insatiable craving for blood. It's not a lust driven by demonic forces, but a grimly practical necessity. The parasite requires particular nutrients or conditions found only in human blood for its reproductive cycle. In this biological theater, the vampire becomes a tragic figure, bound not by supernatural forces, but by the inexorable demands of a parasitic life form. Now, does that sound right to you? We're reimagining the vampire tonight in terms of parasite. And is it possible then, beyond and beyond, the reason why we don't have these monsters stomping around today is because some of these things have gone underground. Now, consider this. Many of these stories we talk about come from the Middle Ages, and beyond that, of course, because these stories go back for a very long time. Now, if we talk about the long cycle, the long count calendar, the Baktuns of the Mayans, and the things that we always consider, happening on Earth that are really sort of out of our realm of perception, because we can only go so far back without heavily speculating. So we're going to heavily speculate, of course, because that's what we do on Troubled Minds. So think of it this way. If indeed vampires and werewolves walked among us in the days of yore, that itself means that, let's say, this entity, this parasitic entity that's actually doing its thing, it needs a population to infect. Meaning this. Let's say the Black Death in Europe. actually killed off 1/4 of the population of the modern world at the time, they said. 1/4, 1 in 4 people actually died as part of the Black Death. So what if somehow the actual parasitic entities realized there was something happening to its host pool, which of course would be the human population? And if that's the case, maybe since the Dark Ages, these entities have gone underground. They've laid to rest in dormancy, waiting for a new period where billions of willing and capable hosts, maybe not willing, but actual hosts, were available for infection. And that's the part that's a little creepy, because it does seem to make some sort of sense. And of course, in the larger scheme, when you think ice ages and things like this, and the population densities of the world and different places and different times, maybe this is why those archetypes that we always talk about as monsters within us, maybe it's part of our DNA memory. Maybe it's part of that actual epigenetic arachnophobia type of thing, where we're supposed to be afraid of vampires because they're very real, or werewolves because they're very real. And that's what I want to know. You like the theory? You like the idea? How does it fit? How does it not fit? Are there holes here? Plot holes, Mike? Plot holes or not? That's okay. Either way, but we'll consider a bunch of ideas here and how this kind of works or doesn't. As you see, got a lot of write up here to get to, and which is amazing, because this is like I said, came like a bolt of blue when I first read that first thing about. Think about how creepy that is. Okay, so this thing called the the lancet liver fluke is a brain parasite. It infects an ant. The ant is then compelled to climb to the top of a stalk of grass and sit there and wait and wait and wait and wait until the sun comes up. And then it seeks shelter. It seeks shade, so it does not burn in the sunlight itself, thereby killing the host ant and, of course, the parasite within. It seeks shelter. It seeks shade during the hot hours of the day. And then suddenly, when the sun goes down again, this thing emerges from its shadows to stand erect atop the blade of grass once again. Now, if that doesn't sound like a very weird life cycle of a vampire itself, at least in those terms, the sort of nocturnal cycle of control. You see what I'm getting at? It's the first thing I thought of when I saw this first article here, the brain parasite with the ants. I was like, that is bizarre. That is incredibly bizarre. And so the greater and larger question as part of this is, do you think we're actually all being controlled, and that the idea of free will is nonsense? Because if there's something within us like this that is just, let's say, ubiquitous in the human populations, then suddenly we're worse than simulation theory, because we're flesh and blood. But that idea of actual free will just kind of withers away under the strain of the bacterial or parasitic infestation of the world itself. So I don't know. As usual, no answers for me, just questions. That's really what this is, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. And that's what this is all about. If you want to be part of the show, 702-957-1037. That's 702-957-1037. You can find the Discord link at troubledminds.org. We can put you on the show that way as well. A lot of ways to look at this, and a lot of ways to apply this to not just, again, the main theme tonight is going to be vampires and werewolves. But like we said with the chupacabras, the Mothman, and the rest of this stuff, it might fit. It might fit. I think the Mothman is probably a little bit rare, maybe too rare to kind of call this scenario a thing. But it's worthy of speculation here. What about the chupacabra? Well, they say they're mangy coyotes. Well, what if it's not a mangy coyote, as science explaining these things away? What if it's a coyote or a feral dog that's been infected by this thing that actually makes it, again, is sort of perpetuate these life cycles of, the goat sucker, the chupacabra, which is literally goat sucker. And it needs goat blood for some parasitic reason to continue the life cycle of the entity itself. Seems wild, right? Well, this is the type of stuff that's going on around us all the time. You want some more examples? There's more examples. We talked about toxoplasmosis. We talked about all kinds of other stuff. There's a whole list here. There's a whole list of this stuff. You guys won't believe how many that we know about. So imagine this. Imagine all the ones we know about, but now imagine all the ones we don't. Yes, meaning parasites. Okay, let's see. There's a few here. There's Toxoplasma gondii, hairworms. So upon reaching maturity, hairworms compel their insect hosts, often grasshoppers or crickets, to leap into bodies of water. There, the worms burst forth from their hosts to continue their life cycle in their aquatic environment. Seems fine, right? Seems fine. Leucochloridium paradoxum. This parasitic flatworm takes residence in the eye stalks of snails, pulsating in a colorful display that mimics a caterpillar. Birds, mistaking the parasite for a tasty morsel, consume the snail's eye stalks. The parasite then reproduces in the bird's digestive tract, completing its life cycle when the bird excretes the eggs. Seems fine, right? Seems fine. What's another one? Let's see. Cordyceps. We've all heard of this. We've already mentioned in relation to the liver fluke. But the parasitic fungus cordyceps infects insects, compelling them to climb to high points before erupting from their heads in a grotesque spore release. We've seen a lot of this stuff. This stuff exists in nature, and it's not terribly uncommon. And so that becomes a really larger concept here in terms of not just people being controlled by these, which we could add to the wrinkle, of course. As you know, these conversations are nonlinear and open-ended. We can take it wherever you want to take it. But are we being controlled? And are there, let's say, these parasites laying dormant that might resurrect folklore tales from the days of yore? I don't know. It seems wild to me. And not only that, it seems even mildly plausible, which in that case is not very troubled mindsy, because usually we're way off the rails here. But this one at least has half a wheel still on the rail. In any case, another one called Ampulex compressa. This wasp injects its venom into cockroaches, turning them into docile zombies. The wasp then leads the incapacitated roach back to its burrow, where it lays an egg on it. The larva consumes the roach from the inside out. Seems fine. This seems fine. Nature as a, what's it called? The ends justify the means. And if you got to procreate, you got to procreate. You got to do what you got to do in the parasite world. But what do you guys think? Too wild for you, the theories? Or do you think that there's something to this is really the question? Because it seems bizarre to me that this might be an actual thing. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. 702-957-1037. Click the Discord link at troubledminds.org. We'll put you on the show just like this. Let's go to Daryl in New York. What's up, my friend? How are you tonight? Welcome back. It's been a minute. You're on Troubled Minds. How are you? And go right ahead.
Hey, Mike. I didn't make a list today because I didn't have time to. But this is ringing a terrible bell with me. This is not unusual. I've heard all this before. I know about cordyceps. I know about larvae and worms and all this stuff from suffering from Morgellons. I went down a serious rabbit hole. Just trying to get relief and some cure. And was looking, just found out all this information. There was, of course, a lot of conspiracy theories. There was something about, genetically manipulated termites or ants or locusts or grasshoppers, I forget, that were suicidal in South America. And the funny thing is and I was talking to somebody just about this today. She was saying, did you hear about this weird disease that's causing people to turn into zombies? I'm like, no, I haven't heard about that. And she's, again, in South America. And it had something to do with a prion disease, which is like something you get if you were, like the mad cow disease, for example, or if you are a cannibal, from ingesting your own species. Apparently it makes you go crazy or it does affect your brain. And that's another, conspiracy theory rabbit hole about, maybe some medications are being manipulated with that in mind, with that kind of technology. I don't know. Not saying it's true. But anyway, this is all ringing a terrific bell, that, the genetically modified mosquitoes that are supposed to stop malaria, and they're, how can this go wrong? And, there's a lot of stuff going on. I don't know, how much of it is true. Some of it is true, But who knows? I'm just saying, it just rings a terrific bell, unfortunately. And that's what they were, speculating that Morgellons might have been genetically manipulated. Somebody looked at the DNA involved and saw that there were two man-made, strings of DNA that weren't possibly natural, So you just got to wonder how, we're...
Exactly right. So think about this sort of beyond Morgellons. Do you think then, as usual, let's throw out the government conspiracy and say the genetically modified stuff. I'm with you. It's horrific, and who knows what level we're meddling with nature at that point, and that becomes a terrifying thing in its own right. But what about going back to folklore? And so beyond Morgellons, it can control you in bizarre ways and make you, see the world in a very, very, very different way when you're afflicted by it. But the thing is, do you think that going back into sort of the natural history of the world, that some of this stuff is actually real, meaning the vampire or the chupacabra or the werewolf, but not as paranormal entities, but more as these entities that are afflicted by these parasites that make them react a particular way?
Right.
And how do you feel about that? And do you think that maybe that type of thing is laying dormant and possibly exists out there?
Well, I don't know. If let's say we do manipulate things to a fault that they become a little, unnatural. I think it's been done before. Apparently with like Cyclops and things like that. Who created a Cyclops if that was not a myth? Was that some kind of experiment? To create some kind of. Even today, we were looking at the different. The difference between like an ox and a cow.
No. Nope.
Well, they're really kind of the same thing, except they're castrated cows, so they become beasts of burden. So they become muscular and they could do a lot of tasks and you could train them, but they're the same thing. But they're a lot more stronger than a cow, and they have much more independence because they're trained to do other jobs. But that's just. A given. But, what did we do in the past to make, beasts of burden more productive? How much did we manipulate besides cutting off their, whatever? You know what I mean?
You can say gonads, Daryl. You can say gonads. But that's like a sort of man-made natural manipulation. Natural, quote natural. But does it go beyond that? Because you're right. If we've been looking to manipulate sort of the natural system forever, but is it a two-way street? As my grandfather always used to say, Mike, the road goes two ways, he would say. And so what if the natural world is actually trying to manipulate us back? And through these sort of, I'm always talking about control mechanisms in that sense. And there's something happening that I can't quite put my finger on. Maybe it's this. Maybe it's not cosmic whatsoever. Maybe the void is quiet. But what if the fractals are fractals within, and fractals of parasites that we've never considered to be real, and suddenly that turns this world upside down incredibly. Your thoughts on that, or anything else, of course?
Well, let's say the frequencies of the 5G, for example, could be, have an effect on nature. It has an effect on your brains. It has an effect on your consciousness. It, can make you have a brain fog, etc. We don't know all the impacts of it because, of course, they're not studying it. They're just going full throttle. But we don't know, how are these going to impact, other things that are, it's just disrupting the natural flow of nature. So we're going to start to see modifications and mutations, and this could be just a freak of nature, freak of nature things. Yeah, the chupacabra is a mystery. Is that some sort of freak of nature? Is it some sort of interbreeding between some kind of an alien animal and our animals that just made it super weird or super capable?
That's exactly the point. Yeah, no, it's exactly the point. So, but like I said, it does make some sense. Like I said, the plot hole is, well, how come they're not walking around among us now, Mike? There's no things. Well, there's no vampires. There's no werewolves. There's no, chupacabras and masks, this type of stuff. What are you talking about, Mike? Well, what if this thing is dormant? And maybe these things that we see are outliers of something that got infected. And it's seen, and maybe it's the parasite is not fine tuned because it's outside of its preferred, let's say, climate or life cycle or whatever. Go ahead, sorry.
That was also a thought, a conspiracy thought, or an explanation of Magellan's, that it could have been something about the polar ice caps melting, and there's some parasites that we're not used to having that haven't been around for many, many years that we're not accustomed to, and that's why people are having these bad symptoms, because it's so foreign, because we haven't been evolving along with it. That was a theory about Morgellons. It might have been a parasite from the ice caps melting, something like that.
Yeah, sort of like black goo, like that. The idea of black goo that's been maybe an alien virus that's kind of coming out of a melting situation. Yeah, it could be. Mm-hmm. It could be. As you know, we're just about out of time. 30 seconds left. What's your final thought here? I appreciate you calling. It's been a minute, and thanks for coming back. What do you think? Yeah? Nah? Somewhere in between?
I don't know. It was something. I was looking into this. 2014, I guess, is when I got sick. So, this was all parts of the theories of what Magellan's could have been, and definitely, a man-made sort of, adjustment of nature, and plus, like the manipulation remotely. Like, I would get electrical shocks. I was telling somebody this. I wasn't even touching things, and I would get an electric shock. And I got like an electrocution in my thumb. I wasn't touching anything. I was like,
amen. Hang tight, Daryl. We're out of time. If you want to stay over, you're welcome to. I appreciate it. Please meet up. You're the best. That's Daryl in New York. Okay. More biology of the uncanny, cyclical, historic horror, and your calls when we return. Maybe more with Daryl. Don't go anywhere. More coming up. Be right back. We are talking about the alien abduction phenomenon.
The aliens are looking through your eyes and they're accessing your optic nerve. I'm doing fantastic. And through that optic nerve, they're transferring to your brain. People are calling random images as they traverse neurons in the brain.
So
and they also feel them planting or receiving memories or ideas or images.
Broadcasting live from a secret bunker just off the extraterrestrial highway. Somewhere in the desert sands outside of Las Vegas. From somewhere in space-time, loosely labeled Generation X on planet Earth. And asking questions of you in earnest into the digital darkness.
Good evening and welcome to Troubled Minds Radio. I'm your host, Michael Strange, and we're streaming on YouTube, Rockfin, Rumble, Twitter, and Twitch. We are broadcasting live on the Troubled Minds Radio Network. That's KUAP Digital Broadcasting. Tonight we're talking about Halloween, except Troubled Minds style. And a fascinating fusion of folklore and biology. The legendary creatures that have haunted our collective imagination, vampires, werewolves, and even lesser-known cryptids, could be reimagined as hosts in complex parasitic relationships. These parasites, capable of altering behavior, physiology, and even circadian rhythms may lie dormant for centuries, explaining their absence in modern times. When viewed through this biological lens, mythical monsters become not mere tales, but potential realities, challenging the boundaries between the natural and the supernatural. And of course, the entire seed idea began with this bizarre article from IFL Science, which of course is I freaking love science, and the headline is this: How a brain parasite turns ants into zombies that hide from the sunlight. And if that doesn't scream vampire to you, I'm not sure what does. Imagine what's going on with this. And let's say there is some sort of human equivalent of this that makes people incredibly antisocial, that makes them hide from the sun, entirely nocturnal, makes them have a taste for human blood as part of a parasitic relationship to pass on to the next brood of parasites to the next human host. I mean, this makes a lot of sense in biological terms because we see some of this stuff actually in nature, which I listed off a bunch of those things previously. We can retouch on that as well. We've talked about toxoplasmosis on this show several times. And the weird part is that we really can't tell exactly, specifically, how it's manipulating us. That's the problem. We got some ideas, but imagine if it goes quite a bit deeper than we ever dreamed. Or if toxoplasmosis is just the tip of the iceberg, and this new thing is actually known as specifically the lancet liver fluke, the brain parasite that makes these ants into these controlled zombies that climb up to the top of a blade of grass. They sit there and they wait to be grazed on by grazing animals, and of course consumed as part of the process, where they continue to multiply inside the grazing animal, the grazing mammal. However, if they sit up on top of the ant that's infected by this lancet liver fluke, sits on top of the blade of grass for too long and the sun comes out, of course it will bake in the sun and kill the ant. So it's adapted, and it notices temperature changes, it notices the physiology of the ant, of course, and it's not immortal. And so during the daylight hours, it finds shade, it finds shelter, it finds darkness to survive until dusk, wherein it climbs to the top of the grass blade again to sit at the very edge, waiting as if staring into the heavens for something to happen. Now, think about this, and don't get offended. No, I'm not going to say it. 702-957-1037. Click the Discord link at troubledminds.org. We'll put you on the show. It's as simple as that. Let's go to James Salcido, the paranormal expert at Troubled Minds. Salcido Paranormal, what's up, my brother? You're on with yours truly, Michael Strange. Don't get intimidated. Don't be weird, James. Everything's fine. How are you, bro?
Well, I mean, how can I not be? You know me, I'm weird. Don't tell me not to be weird. I'm weird.
Okay, no. Okay, fine. All right, you win. You're right. You're totally weird. You win this round. I was actually going to make a joke and it didn't come out right. So, but anyway, welcome to the thing. How are you, bro?
I'm okay, but I have to say, being part vampire, I have to say I don't believe in any of this at all because I'm part vampire and nothing is controlling me. So.
Right, of course, of course, yeah. Because that would be impossible, yes. Inconceivable, as the guy says from Princess Bride.
No, but this idea is amazing because it makes me think of, you mentioned how the idea of vampires and even just other cryptids goes back to the Middle Ages, but then also just around the world, and that especially seems to be the case. And the thing about that is, in different locations, each of these locations, the creature in question, whether it's a vampire or werewolf or whatever, they always seem to be a little bit different depending on the area where that particular myth or legend or story is from. But then also you don't hear about as much of them, at least that doesn't seem like you do now compared to the further back you go. Or there's stories about all these creatures, but they date back further for the most part than just recent times. And so that does maybe suggest that there is something to this idea after all.
Yeah, because again, like you're describing here, these stories are ubiquitous, basically, in human mythology and folklore. And again, it doesn't matter. Sort of rewind 500 years, and they were talking about these entities. Rewind 500 years, we could still find traces of stories of these similar entities. Rewind 500 years, go back to the original writing, and there's still traces and hints of these stories and ideas. That's like, wait a minute now. So suddenly, science is saying, come on, this is nonsense, guys. There's no proof, et cetera, so on, which is fine, of course. Like I said, I love science. I'm not here to undermine that process at all. I just hate when they politicize it. Of course, that's a whole different show. But the point in me bringing that up is that things unknown to science, for sure, there's a ton of them. And if we're talking about parasites and how they manipulate the behavior of actual hosts, we are hosts. I mean, we are almost the perfect type of host because we got the horny gene, and we get, meaning that we're almost as bad as rabbits, and there's a lot of us, and we just keep on proliferating, and there's billions and billions of people, and where there may be trillions of bacteria and parasites and things like this, many trillions even. Still, billions of human hosts is quite a wealth of, let's say, clay to work with. If you're a parasite, you get what I mean, James?
Yeah, and then just the way that cryptids have been seen over the years, but now they're more often seen. Usually, anyway, there are exceptions. They're seen more out in nature, and I think it makes me wonder if there are two types of sets of creatures out there, entities out there. There's the one set that maybe is biological that we're talking about more in this show tonight, and then there are the other creatures that seem to have other abilities to be non-physical and or teleport and whatever else. And you hear about these different the similar creatures that maybe there's. I've heard the idea that there are different kinds of, let's say, Sasquatch or Bigfoot, and where some of them seem to be just basically a living creature of some kind, and then others just do some amazing things, again, like teleporting or changing shape or any number of things. And I wonder if what we're talking about in this show is more of the biological version of whatever's out there.
Yeah, or I was thinking that too. So I was thinking about you in that the intro there, and I was like, okay, so if we just kind of wash the paranormal out of this, I don't think you can. I think this is part of, when you talk about, how these other entities maybe fit into this, like goblins, things, more paranormal style entities, or the banshee, or things like this that people suggest are a thing. And the weird part is that, you think of Gollum from Lord of the Rings, and he was, as we all know, if spoiler alert for a 100-year-old book or something. So how long was it? A 75-year-old book, whatever it is. So Gollum was originally a hobbit, and he was corrupted by the ring, and he became an entity that was not very hobbit-like anymore. It became more like a ghoul, or more like what would you say, like an actual goblin? Not quite an orc, but a goblin. And notice they use both of those terms in Lord of the Rings, but I digress a little bit there. But let's say in that sense that the paranormal things are part of the same life cycle of these actual entities, whatever they are, the actual parasites themselves, as maybe creating La Llorona, or creating the crying woman by the river in the Mexican folklore, or is it South American folklore? I'm not sure exactly. I think it's Mexican, but beyond that, there are a lot of ways to look at this. And if these things lay dormant, this explains why they're not here now. But we still see this sort of thing. Imagine this, James. Now, for instance, we talk about the term lunatic, and we bring this up often on the show, where the moon does the tide thing, and all the rest of that, and there's a massive influence on Earth, just what it's doing, right? And we're all made of water, and how it's maybe probably most likely affecting us. Well, then you get a full moon, and then the emergency rooms fill up. The cops suddenly, where everything's been chill and cool for a while, they're out there just kind of like smacking down just weird behavior, people climbing up the walls type of stuff. So I wonder then if instead of the direct influence of the moon on the human person, what if it's actually sort of a lunar cosmic situation with a parasite that's making us do like this ant climbing up and down the blade of grass because of the temperature, and there's something about moonlight. Maybe it's a little more paranormal than we thought. And back to full circle for the Lord of the Rings bit. I can talk, can't I, James? You don't have to cover all this, of course. But remember, in The Hobbit, Elrond pulls out the map and talks about the moon runes, letters that can only be read by the light of a full moon. Anyway, what do you got, James?
Yeah, I don't doubt that the moon, I mean, we've talked about that before, even with just sleeping patterns, how some of us have noticed that we sleep differently during different phases of the moon, or we don't sleep as well. But so yeah, there's that. I think that could be part of it as well. Going back to though the what I was saying earlier, and I was thinking of that, just kind of what you said, where maybe it is all connected and it's all the same cryptids, and they are sort of affected by these things. But then you also, I wonder, what if it is the same and they are able to, again, teleport or hide or whatever, and that's why we don't see them. And part of that reason why we don't see them is it's these creatures, these parasites or whatever, making the decisions when they come and go, and making decisions that seem like it'd be too much for an animal to make, an ape or whatever, where it's like, if that's too smart. But then if it's something that's doing something this complicated, maybe it's not too smart. Maybe that's why all these creatures disappear, and maybe even that's why in some cases you have people that vanish, and because they're attacked by these creatures, again, to spread more of these parasites to more people, and that's why we never find them.
Yeah, exactly. As part of this. And I think maybe, and so here's the thing too. So we talk about those long cycles, the Baktuns, I like to call it, because the Mayan term, they say that their calendar was the most accurate in antiquity and all the rest of that, the most accurate long term. But in that longer sense, what if we live in sort of this ice age recycling, and in between these things go dormant as just a part of the weather system, as part of the natural process of the earth. And so let's say, 20,000 years ago, they say there's no human populations. We're just, kind of wanderer, hunter-gatherer type things, no human cities, things like this. But what if in that time they had actual vampires and werewolves walking amongst themselves? I mean, that's the thing. It's like, how would you know? Because it would be washed away to history. And if we don't know what we're looking for in that regard, and maybe it sort of gets frozen up or covered up or goes dormant for a minute until the time is ripe again, maybe that sort of the idea of a zombie apocalypse hiding in the permafrost isn't so ridiculous after all. You ready to be a vampire, James?
I'm already partway there, like I said. So, I mean, I guess if I have to. But no, and that's the thing. Another thing, too, about this is, in general, I mean, yes, there are all kinds of reports of people having weird encounters with other creatures. But what if, like you said earlier, they are the minority right now, because maybe even they're just keeping track of what's going on and waiting for that time when the rest of their kinds are supposed to show up again. And it is some kind of a cycle, and we have no idea, but they do.
Well, how would you ask them? So think about this. Let's go AI for a sec, James. So what if, so AI is going to be able to soon be able to decipher sort of animal language, right? We're going to be able to, kind of run like the cadence of a dog bark or like a dolphin, chirping or things like this into AI. And it's going to be able to kind of, break down, maybe not necessarily words in a specific language, but definitely sentiments. What if, let's say 100 years from now, AI is able to tune into the parasitic world and actually ask the parasite itself through the host questions, what it wants, what it needs. You know what I mean? Like, or that, you know, we talk about the mycelium network or things like this, but I mean, if you take AI and look at it in those terms, it's going to decipher or going to have the computing power to decipher this type of stuff. So imagine tapping into the parasite world and being able to ask the larger entity itself, the group of entities, a question. Does that creep you out? It creeps me out.
That's definitely a possibility, and yeah, but I mean, that's no more or no less creepy than a lot of other stuff we talk about at times. So, but yeah, no, this is a great topic. I think in the end, I mean, it doesn't matter because cats rule the world. So, you know, we'll find that out from the AI too at some point, even though some of us already know that.
They're gonna hook up the AI to the cat, and it's not gonna meow, it's not gonna hiss, it's gonna just start pawing like, get off of me. I mean, but here's the thing though. So cats themselves, I know you're making jokes here, but cats themselves are part of that toxoplasmosis life cycle. They're part of that with the rats and the mice and the rodents and the cats and that keeps this actual parasite alive on Earth. So imagine if it's more than that. Imagine if it's not just cats, it's every other damn thing out there. Wild stuff, man. What else you got? As you know, nonlinear, open-ended, pretty nutty.
Well, I'm kind of half joking, half not. I think cats, in a way, kind of already are parasites. So,
James, lower your voice. Lower your voice.
So, but yeah, it really is amazing, and it just. I've always felt like everything can be connected in different ways, and this makes me think that maybe in those cases where maybe the reason why we overall compared to the overall population of the world, if you think about that, the number of people that have maybe claimed to see things out in the forest or woods or nature in any place like that, that number of people over time, I'm sure, compared to the population of Earth. Again, throughout time, is pretty small. But then maybe that's what I keep coming back to, is that we've been just seeing the outliers or the ones that were assigned in a way to keep watch over everything. What if all the cryptids? There's one. What if all the cryptids controlled by the parasites are the watchers?
Like actual sort of special entities that are touched by the black goo, or touched by, and again, the black goo, if you're like, come on, Mike, really? The black goo is basically the von Neumann probe. Look that up. It's those again, microscopic things that are self-replicating that you can spread all over the galaxy to keep tabs on what's happening on different planets. And we're actually developing them now with our technology. They're not ready. They're basically nanobots, but that would be black goo. So imagine in sort of the larger sense of that, maybe what if, James, this is an alien thing? What if this is like that von Neumann probe from something that made these things millions of years ago? I was kind of racking my brain a little bit to kind of come up with I was like, nah, there's no aliens here. There's no aliens here. Because, you got to rope the aliens in once in a while. But there's no aliens here. But just in this conversation that we had right now, like you brought up an angle where the aliens might be a thing. Maybe we're being watched by a particular, group of entities that are touched, as they say, by this black goo or von Neumann probe, or these parasites, as we're talking about. Maybe this is part of it and part of the dormant life cycle. Maybe it's being intelligently controlled. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and if these parasites do live and die, and if all things have energy, what if there is this energy consciousness that's running the living parasites? And we have, in a way, ghosts involved in all this too. Sorry, couldn't help it. Not sorry, but yeah. No. Is there a way to fit that in? So this is the idea, is kind of peeling away those paranormal entities of folklore and kind of making them flesh and blood. But does it go back to some other thing? Do you think maybe this, if we're talking sort of an alien technology, Arthur C. Clarke, distinguishing magic from high technology is impossible.
maybe there's something beyond the veil. Maybe this is sort of a dimensional trace of magic von Neumann dust, and black goo kind of goes across that veil. I think this is all possible, man. Why the hell not?
Yeah, I mean, even people have brought it before. The most recent, one of the most recent Star Trek series, they had the idea of that mycelial. I always butcher that word, but that network being part of the multiverse and connected, and using the people that are in the ship, that Discovery, using that to get around, and even eventually, maybe to go outside of their own universe.
Yeah, definitely. And that becomes something that's a little more complex, a little more cosmic, a little more dimensional, which again is beyond the veil. Hey, why not? Look, see, hey James, you give us a little rope, we hang ourselves. This is what we do on this show. we could tie it into, hey, you want to make us to talk Marvel and Lord of the Rings and folklore and some Dungeons and Dragons and some wild new ideas in the same show? You got it. You got it. I appreciate the call, James. You're the best. Final thought, as you know, we're just about out of time.
Yeah, no, it's amazing how all these different fictional universes can connect to this universe and seem to make a multiverse of its own. So thank you for having me on, and great call from Daryl earlier as well, and looking forward to the rest of the calls.
Indeed. Thank you for calling. Thank you for listening. Thanks for being my friend. Thanks for being the paranormal expert at Troubled Minds. You guys know him. You love him. James Salcido. Look it up. He's got a podcast, a radio show. It's called Salcido Paranormal. Link's going to be in the description. You can search it directly, SALSIDO space paranormal, or of course, troubledminds.org/friends. It says follow James here. Let's get his downloads up on his podcast. Let's rank him worldwide. Amazing stuff, James. Amazing call. Please give James a follow. If you haven't done that yet, you're hurting my feelings. He's so amazing. 702-957-1037. We're talking about biology of the uncanny. The cyclical historic horror. Is it possible there's an entity out there, a parasite, that's actually creating folklore entities of old, and maybe it's laying dormant for its return? Be right back. More Troubled Minds on the way. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Troubled Minds. I'm your host, Michael Strange. We're streaming on YouTube, Rockfin, Rumble, Twitter, and Twitch. We are broadcasting live on the Troubled Minds Radio Network. That's KUAP Digital Broadcasting. Tonight, we're talking about a fascinating fusion of folklore and biology. The legendary creatures that have haunted our collective imagination, vampires, werewolves, and even lesser-known cryptids, could be reimagined as hosts in complex parasitic relationships. These parasites, capable of altering behavior, physiology, and even circadian rhythms, may lie dormant for centuries, explaining their absence in modern times. When viewed through this biological lens, mythical monsters become not mere tales, but potential realities, challenging the boundaries between the natural and the supernatural. How plausible does that sound to you? Like I said, I think there's enough here, enough meat on this bone to give it a good solid maybe. And typically, most of the maybe juice stuff we talk about is like, maybe in another universe. But this one, in this sense, is kind of maybe right here. What's up, Jason on Rockfin? I see you there. Thanks for popping in. And so we're just doing the thing. We're hanging out and considering the ideas. But what do you know about this? Is it possible that vampires, werewolves, cryptids of old, and these cyclical tales of the archetypes, the Carl Jung archetypes, are not merely manifestations of our subconscious, or let's say rather instead, they are manifestations of our DNA memory, of our epigenetics, like arachnophobia, like our fear of reptiles, like our fear of snakes, because maybe these things at some point in history were very real. 702-957-1037. Click the Discord link at troubledminds.org. We'll put you on the show. And let's go to David on the road. What's up, my man? You are on Troubled Minds. How are you? I got your echo right here. I think we're good. And welcome. How you doing, my man? Go right ahead.
Doing good. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. What's up, my man?
All right. Yeah. This is an interesting subject. I'm on my break right now. I'm pretty tired. I'm gonna try to rest for the night, but hopefully I'll come across coherent. Let's see. I just reminds me of this book I read called The Scent of Desire, and it's about the olfactory senses and autonomic nervous system and just how powerful the sense of smell can be over people and plants and just all living things that can smell. And in this book it talks about there was these tulips that people were cultivating and growing these tulips, and at one point a tulip got a parasite and it became desired by people because it was beautiful, and then they were trying to eradicate this parasite from all the other tulips, and they got rid of it, but all of a sudden other tulips started mimicking the parasite, but they didn't have it. But it's because people were cultivating the beauty of it. They're picking them and choosing them over the others, and so the tulip mimicked the parasite, but it didn't have it. So it's interesting how maybe that could be something that's part of the system of mimicking if something is desired like that. So you could have like some kind of it's like Rensfield syndrome, the vampire syndrome, with the drinking of blood and desire to drink blood, and they say it's because of lack of hemoglobin and all that stuff, and it's interesting,
Yeah, big time. So that could be sort of part of that cultural programming stuff, like we always talk about, sort of that social conditioning and some of that stuff. But beyond that, I think that there are some layers here that we probably have not yet conceived of. Again, scientifically, of course, I'm not a scientist. Everybody knows this. I'm a weirdo is what I really am. To frame it is exactly perfect. But I mean, in the sense of we don't know what we don't know, and so it's okay to speculate in that regard. But what if there is sort of these parasites that are creating these old ideas, and they're built into that epigenetic memory as part of us, and this is where these tales come from? Would that shock you, that this stuff that we've heard about? Let's not say all of it, because all is always a big word, but let's say a lot of it. What if a lot of that stuff was incredibly and very real? Would that spook you a little bit?
Well, yeah, I guess so. Just like the cat and the mouse, parasite, and it's like isn't that a fairly new discovery?
The one we did tonight is a brand new study with the ants up and down the grass. Yeah. The toxoplasmosis is fairly new, I think, within the last 30 to 50 years. So yeah, this is sort of a new scientific understanding of our relationship with the parasites of the world, and even in the sense of, let's say, we know bacteria kind of like is all over us, and the gut biome and all kinds of like just weird stuff about people. Without that bacteria within us, we die. Without having like a healthy gut biome, we're dead. So there's a lot of that incredibly bizarre things that we like. How would you know if every human out there has it? And it makes us who we are as a sort of species and population worldwide. How would you be able to sort of dissect it without what do they call it in science? Not a placebo or a without a control, a human control that didn't have it. If all of us have it, if it's built into us, that becomes the question, right? As they say, you can't measure a system. Yeah, you can't measure a system from within the system. You have to be outside of the system to be able to measure it. So that's weird, man. This is a weird thing. So regarding the rest of this and cryptids and things, what if you're again, Vegas odds here, and you're betting, Are you putting $5 down on this? That maybe something out there is going to come up in the next 50 to 100 years that something like this might be real. I mean, just looking at all the weird stuff that we've seen in terms of, did you catch the bit with the grass and the ant? I'll recap it if you didn't.
I think so.
Okay.
A little bit of it, yeah. Yeah,
super weird, right? So okay, the ant gets infected by this thing called, I'm going to recap it anyway just because it's a good radio habit. The lancet liver fluke is a brain parasite that infects the ant. The ant climbs to the top of the grass stalk and waits there to be eaten by a grazing mammal. But when the sun comes out, of course, if the ant stays at the top of the grass stalk, it will roast and die in the sun. So this actual parasite, the brain parasite, the lancet liver fluke, controls the ant to climb down and seek shade and shelter until dusk, where it climbs back up to the top of the grass stalk again, hoping to be eaten by a grazing animal. Like, if that's not like a creepy vampire ant, what the hell is, man? I mean, that's incredibly bizarre.
Yeah, it's like a zombie type of ant. Yeah, it's like it's controlling it, yet it's still alive, but it's not dead. You know.
Yeah, it's not dead. It's not dead yet.
Yeah.
But it's being controlled to be dead. It's like literally everything it's doing. It's like begging for the end. Show me the end. And not only that, think about this in terms of let's say you've heard of a Joshua tree, right? That cactus in the desert where it's got so the reason they called it that is Joshua when he put his hands up to God or whatever that was. And my biblical stuff is terrible, but I read the Wikipedia like 10 years ago. But the Joshua trees, there's these weird trees in the desert that have like these sort of like branching arms that are up like that, and they called them that as part of that sort of biblical story of Joshua putting his arms up to God. I butchered that, but what I mean in that instance is because it kind of goes back to the ant. The ant is sort of like at the end of the stalk, putting his ant arms up to God, expecting rapture, expecting salvation when the mammal comes and eats him off the top of the grass. I mean, dear God, like think about that.
It's the same thing with the cat and the mouse. You know, the mouse, being less, being more putting himself in danger in order to get eaten. It's what was toxoplasma? What do you call that again?
Yeah, toxoplasmosis. Yeah, with the cats and the rats and that whole bit. Yeah, it's so wild, man. It's so wild.
Yeah, but you look at humans and the way humans react and do things, and you go, why are you doing that again? Why it's like the cycle. And a lot of it's psychiatry or just different mental disorders and stuff like that. But you wonder what if it's something more than that? A simple one parasite in the brain, and something really small that's triggering such behavior, but hopefully not. But I mean, yeah. Just going down that path of thinking.
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter Spaces once in a while, just listening to some of these guys, and like I said, I'm not sure it's the best place if it's just sort of like a gateway drug. Don't do it. But shout out Campbell if you're listening. I don't know if he listens, but he said, we were talking about this. It was a few weeks back. But he said something to the effect of, if you strip everything down to the most granular level, there is no free will. Like, we believe there is, but there is not. So in that sense, what if it's sort of manipulated by these parasites? And beyond that, just sort of the granular level of things, of the basis of things, it's like we're sort of always controlled by our physiology, by our needs and our wants and all this stuff, right? That our most primitive desires are controlling us constantly. But what if those things specifically are not human? What if all of that and everything that's sort of evolved alongside us for these millions of years, they tell us, is actually that gut biome sending us messages to do all the things we're supposed to do? Obey, David, obey.
Eat the certain foods that the gut biome wants. Cravings and stuff like that. I can't remember what book it was, but I remember reading something about there's certain. Anyway, it's that's an interesting subject. I'm kind of losing my track thinking here, but
that's okay. I got a question for you.
Day.
That's okay.
Sure.
You and me both, brother. Unless you're exhausted and you want to kick back, you tell me. But I got a couple questions for you if you want to hang a bit.
Sure, let's go. Yeah.
Okay, Jason over on Rockfin says this. Shout out Jason on Rockfin. He says, I think all the crazy monsters we make movies about were real, and Noah's flood was to wipe them out. Some people are trying to bring them back. Just my take. That's amazing. What's up, Jason? That's amazing. He continues, have you seen where the uber rich are replacing their blood with younger blood for longevity? So much like the vampire legends. And so again, we're talking about sort of the philosopher's stone again, and the elites and the living forever and all the rest of this stuff. But of course, you do it on the backs of the youth. And wherein, of course, is the worst crime of all time, because you're robbing someone else of their life for your own. And so, back to the flood. Do you think that maybe that's a thing? So we were talking about the idea of this stuff happening in these longer cycles. What if these massive floods, again, basically all but confirmed by all the mythology of the world and folklore of the world, but also maybe even by science and these these ideas of ice ages coming and going over tens of thousands of years, you think maybe that's the case? Maybe Noah's flood wiped out all the monsters, and well, here we are, waiting for them to come back.
Oh well, yeah. I mean, that's possible. Yes, and I think science is starting to create the monsters. I mean, we've got the CRISPR system, and that's the DNA splicing. You could put anything into another gene, splicing of the DNA. And I mean, years ago they had the spider goat, which is basically a goat with spider DNA in it, and they're able to milk the goat and then process that milk into a silk which is stronger than steel, and the DoD uses it, and they figure out what to use it for. But it's creepy stuff. And if they can do that back then, this is quite a while ago, it's easy to do, and it's
it seems like it
not great to think about too much, but it's
Yeah. Do you believe that at the most granular level, we are actually not the free will doesn't exist? We're sort of controlled and governed constantly and continually and forever by our impulses and by sort of that baked in process. You think that's a thing?
Yeah, there could be certain things within the system that are fighting each other in order for control over what you're doing. It's kind of like the devil and the angel on their shoulders. It's like what wolf do you feed? That kind of thing. But it probably goes to a deeper level. Yeah, I mean, if there's the gut biome, then you got the parasites, you got these different things, and they're all fighting for control, and we're not aware of it. We're just going by the emotions and the triggers and the
just being led along the primrose path to sitting on top of the blade of grass with the ant waiting for the rapture to come take us. You know what I mean? Like think about it in that sense. The Joshua tree, prostrate before God, waiting for what comes next. Dear God.
But there is like the ability to like override the systems, I guess. I mean, there's through religion, people have done things to themselves. I mean, I remember, what was it? Was it Vietnam? With the monks burning themselves to death, to protest. Different things like that, starvation, purposely starving yourself. And of course, if there is a parasite, then
the old hunger strike.
There is there is a parasite it would have to want you to die in order to, just like the rat and the cat, So
it's a thing. It's a thing. We've proved it's a thing. So how many other things are similar that we have no damn idea are operating constantly and continually in and amongst us? And I like what you said. So look, like in the woo world, the world of woo, the actual idea is that there's a galactic federation and there's like a galactic war and there's aliens and this type of stuff. What if it's not that at all? What if it's the opposite? It's like you described, and instead there are entities within us, and it's the devil and the angel on our shoulder. And of course, it takes us back to the show about U2 last night. The hand of the devil. Yeah. Just speaking the tongues of angels. I mean, look, this is the type of stuff this is why sort of the human condition is as it is. I think it's why we're always seeking something, because I feel like there's something like that happening, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's cosmic. I don't know if it's parasitic. I don't know if it's somewhere in between. I don't know if it's a complex mixture of all of the above. But I do feel like we are sort of manipulated in a particular way to be a particular way, beyond the way. The way and the way and the way, stack them up. And I'm not even sure we know why. And that's the creepiest part about all this to me. And what makes the outliers, what makes people antisocial, what makes people more social, what makes people gossip, what about the tribalism, what about the fear aspect, the trauma. I mean, there's so many things here that are just the embedded into reality. All of that. Yes. Yeah, and how does that fit? How does it fit? You have no idea, man. And that's part of the thing. Like some of the things you can control, some of the things you can't control, et cetera. So on. Yeah, go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Going down a rabbit hole, eventually they might find something that might go, well, just like you said earlier, having the control. If we're all infected, then we might not be able to find the answer. So yeah, it's gosh, yeah, it is a complex thought process to go down that rabbit hole,
Yeah, it's not even a rabbit hole though. I mean, so we're kind of barely speculating. We're like adding vampires and werewolves into the situation as part of a marching inexorably toward Halloween. But beyond that, like the stuff that we're talking about is real. Like the real parasitic behavior in the animal kingdom. It's like WTF is going on out there. But what if, and some of that's catastrophic. And think about this, by the way. In terms of the actual, let's say, the ant and the Joshua tree, as I described, and climbing to the edge of the thing to be eaten by the grazing mammal, that is catastrophic. But what about all the things within the ants, not talking us, within the ant kingdom that are parasitic, that make them perform particular tasks that we have no damn idea about because... Well, there's no way you would know. You'd have to be an ant and speak that language and be part of that society. And I think that's part of the thing, like sort of communicating from society to society in the animal kingdom. Again, the mycelium network, all the rest of this, how it fits. What the hell's going on in the world, bro? I think it's far more complex than anybody could ever dream is really my point in all of this and why I always bring this weird stuff up.
Yeah, bring it back to that movie, the Body Snatchers, I just thinking that something takes over and nobody's aware of it, and pretty soon everybody's got it but don't know it. And it's things stack on top of each other, like you said earlier. How deep does it go? Just don't know.
Don't know.
Hopefully
that's why we talk about it.
Yeah.
That's why we talk about it. Eventually, we'll figure it out if we don't nuke ourselves first. But which is the great filter. To be a cosmic society, we need to pass the great filter, which means please don't nuke us, elites of the world. You're the best, David. Appreciate it, brother. Yeah. What else you got? I know you're exhausted. I am too. We're grinding through this power. Like I work a lot less than you, I promise you. But I'm still complaining. Anyway, what else you got, my friend?
I think that's it, really. But thank you. Good show. Appreciate it. Fantastic call. Thanks for being you. Thanks for risking your neck out there on the road for all the rest of us. And you have a fantastic night. Rest well, be well, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a great night. You too. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. That's David on the road. You know him, you love him. Look, he's a truck driver, like I always say, part of that invisible process. You go to the grocery store in the morning, and the shelves are stocked because David pulled the load in, and Derek the Night Stalker stayed up overnight to, David driving days and days to get it there. Derek the Night Stalker staying up overnight to stock the shelves to make sure when you go down to get your eggs and your milk in the morning, it's there and ready to go. Like I always say, there's a human aspect to the economy, and do not ever forget it. It's critically important, and it is the power we have against the establishment. Okay? We stop working. We stop paying taxes. What can they do? All they got is tanks and guns. So they're going to just run us over and shoot us? Of course not. That would be absurd, especially if it's a peaceful protest. Think about that deeply. In any case, give David a follow. Talented guy. Again, the truck drivers, God bless him and our truck drivers out there. And don't forget, there's somebody, always that human element making things happen to make sure that we have our modern way of life, okay? So give him a follow. He's a brilliant guitar player, smart guy, as you know. He's got a YouTube channel, links in the description, troubledminds.org/friends. Links down there. It says follow David here. Please go follow his YouTube channel. I would appreciate it very much. That's the way this works. We're still talking about this. Now, look, a couple things. I want to run through this real fast. Now, here's some really bizarre ideas in terms of, let's say, so just to reframe real fast, we're talking about the biology of the uncanny, the cyclical historic horror. And what I mean is, what if these cryptids or these ancient folklore things were real? And they weren't necessarily paranormal entities, but they were humans corrupted by some sort of actual parasitic process. Okay. And so, we're kind of throwing out the paranormal a little bit tonight, but not really, because when James was on it, it sort of made some sense as well. Because when you talk about sort of technology and magic, that type of thing sort of still plays here too. But let's throw the paranormal out just for brevity, because we're running out of time here. And let's say that pre-flood, shout out Jason over there on Rockfin. Pre-flood, what if the cryptids were running amok and there were monsters? And what if the entire game is, as Derek the Night Stalker always says, that maybe the idea is to kind of break down those pillars of reality? And as Jason suggested there, maybe there's people that want these entities back. For what reason? Lord only knows. However, beyond that, is it possible that these things ever existed? Vampires, werewolves, Mothman, you name it, right? All the things that we're supposed to be afraid of, that were actually built into us to be afraid of. It's a real thing. I don't know. No idea, no answers, more questions than always and ever. And of course, love to hear your thoughts on this. What do you know about it? We're talking about a parasitic takeover of not just humanity, but laying dormant and in wait until conditions are perfect to bring back the monsters of old. What do you think? 702-957-1037. That's 702-957-1037. This is Troubled Minds. I'm Michael Strange. Be right back. We got Jen in Missouri and your calls as well. Don't go anywhere. More on the way. We are talking about the alien abduction phenomenon.
The aliens are looking through your eyes and they're accessing your optic nerve. I'm doing fantastic. And through that optic nerve, they're transferring to your brain. People are random images as they traverse neurons in the brain.
We got, all right, so maybe,
and they also feel them planting or receiving memories or ideas or images.
Broadcasting live from a secret bunker just off the extraterrestrial highway. somewhere in the desert sands outside of Las Vegas. From somewhere in space-time, loosely labeled Generation X on planet Earth. And asking questions of you in earnest into the digital darkness.
Good evening and welcome to Troubled Minds Radio. I'm your host, Michael Strange, and we're streaming on YouTube, Rockfin, Rumble, Twitter, and Twitch. We are broadcasting live on the Troubled Minds Radio Network. That's KUAP, Digital Broadcasting. Just search it, it'll come right up. Tonight we're talking about parasites, but not like you think. In a fascinating fusion of folklore and biology, the legendary creatures that have haunted our collective imagination, vampires, werewolves, and even lesser-known cryptids, could be reimagined as hosts in complex parasitic relationships. These parasites, capable of altering behavior, physiology, and even circadian rhythms, may lie dormant for centuries, explaining their absence in modern times. When viewed through this biological lens, mythical monsters become not mere tales, but potential realities, challenging the boundaries between the natural and the supernatural. And it was a theory, look, and it was spawned by literally, sometimes, look, inspiration comes sometimes like a bolt of blue, as the old, what's the name of that song? Every time I see you falling, I get down on my knees and pray, from New Order back in the day. But a bolt of blue was this IFL Science article, how a brain parasite turns ants into zombies that hide from the sunlight. Now, so these ants get infected, they climb to the top of the grass stalk, and they wait to be eaten, okay? But if they sit there in the sun all day long, they will roast and die, and the parasites inside will also die. So what happens is the parasite controls the ant to climb down to the bottom of the situation there and seek shelter during the heat of the day. So basically during the dawn and the dusk, this ant is sitting at the top of the grass stalk, arms or tentacles or whatever they are, sort of raised to the heavens, waiting for the rapture of the mammal to come graze them off the top of the grass, or of course the life cycle completes of the parasite. Weird, right? Not just weird, beyond weird. So we find that these things are not just controlling, let's say, the life cycles of themselves, but they're also controlling the behavior of the hosts. So what if this actually extends to creatures from folklore? 702-957-1037. Love to hear your ideas, because that's why we do this. Let's go to Jed in Missouri. What's up, my friend? You're on Troubled Minds. How are you? And go right ahead.
Hey, it's good to be here. How you doing?
Doing well. Glad to have you. Does a weird one, right? This one's super weird.
Yeah, it is. The controlling, the idea about the parasites controlling the host like that, I think that's key. You know, just to understanding how life is working. I think that when you think about the concept of how many parasites are in the human body, or in the environment entirely, how it is all, and it doesn't even have to necessarily be parasites. I mean, it's a parasitic situation in that, the host is providing everything the parasite needs. And sometimes there's an ambivalence there going on where the parasite and the host there's a benefit for both. And so I think that, in some way, it's almost as if the host is simply alive. In some instances, you wonder what it would be like if they didn't have the parasite, but a lot of times it's necessary to have that parasite to even exist. With some creatures, certain species are very reliant upon the parasites that they carry with them. There's a symbiotic, like a symbiosis situation where they're both benefiting from it. So I think and that's why they allow them to live there and host them, so to speak. But when you think about the combinations of where parasites live and the concepts of the dirt in the ancient world, I wonder about things like the strigoi and the vampires and things like that, where it was really strange, that they would bury in the old world, they didn't have the same types of, airtight sealed caskets and things like that, and the body would be exposed to the worms. And I wonder if some of the places they were buried in, if there was something in the dirt that could reanimate the corpse in a way, or if the person deceased already contained the bacteria or the parasite of some type. That as far as parasites being intelligent, I think it has to do a lot with, that you have a huge field, if you think about it as a wave or a field of organisms that are microscopic and you can't see them at all. And this concept of the virus, that it'd be like a cloud. If you could put it under infrared, or if you could do something with the light frequencies and you could see the thing, it would be, they move as a hive, as a horde, and they are like legion, right? They're enormous fields. That's why, you have all these, how we are trying to, when you're trying to fight off viruses, you have to clean everything, you have to disinfect everything, you have to use UV light. There's all these different things people that, we've discovered to try to do. In the biblical times, like with John the Baptist, he was tying things like a wormwood around his waist, his girdle, like a belt of that, or around the thigh, things like this to try to prevent these bacteria from getting into them, because those are all anti-parasitic. Sage, people doing sage, that smoke actually, it can get into the crevices and everything, and it's got an effect where it's like a disinfectant. It's very effective in a way, smoking, meats and stuff like that, and even homes and people. It makes sense because it's getting rid of the parasites. Why would you want to get rid of them? Of course, you have sickness and illness, which is how they display themselves. These viruses, the way that when they have really taken over, some of them display themselves as bubonic plague, or, the black, like all these different horrific things when they display their fullness of what they are, their expression in a way. But they haven't, if you're infested and they have an intelligence, you could imagine what they might say. And that might be what's coming out of the mouth of people who are possessed or are vampires, that is their language. That is the language of the parasite. That's the language of the worm, whatever that species is. And that's interesting too. When you look on a microscopic level at the, for example, the parasite Mephistopheles, which is named after, or the demon is named after, I'm not sure which, and it causes a terrible illness, and so I think that there's that aspect of it, that if there are enough of them in the host that they are occupying, that they are more so in the body than any other bacteria in the body. They take it over like a puppet. And then you may even hear them talk through the host. The fluke concept, that's what the flu is. It's flukes. That's why they call it the flu. And the flukes are they get in the liver. And they've displayed that there's the possibility that these flukes manipulate the host, say you get the flu, to where they will try to make the host, intentionally sneeze on people. Like when people have sneezed or coughed in your face, and you're like, why did you do that? It could have been unconscious in a way. Also, too touching. Yes.
Triggered. Yeah. Think about it this way, too. So there's like sort of that contagious effect when people yawn. Somebody yawns and somebody, like we all see it and we all yawn as well. Even though, look, we're not tired. I'm strong like bull. And I'm like, I'm the prime of my day and I just smashed 14 Red Bulls and I'm ready to go. Somebody yawns around you and you still yawn. It's bizarre. And that's the type of stuff, right? So is it psychological, or is there some other sort of, and dare I say it, hidden layer as part of this that's manipulating us because of these things? Because that's the whole point of coughing, is to spread the pathogen. Whatever it is, we're supposed to cough, not because it's a symptom that's like, oh, this is what being cold is. No, it's because you're supposed to spray it in somebody's face and give it to them too. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, it wants to persist and spawn. That's exactly what it is. And when you back to the strigoi going into the dirt, like with the idea of life or death going into the ground, and that kind of practice, or at least even like in the cases where the people who practice like tree funerals, well, they'll put them really high up, like in trees and things like that, like tree birth funerals, where and it's practiced among some tribes. They'll put them up in the tops of trees and they'll put the bodies up there. Then birds and things like that can get to them and fly them around all over the place and carry whatever was in the soul of the person. The soul being, not the soul being, because I can't identify. We don't know, but the essence of like the flesh, the essence of the flesh and the bacteria that was in the flesh and what was occupying them. Then those birds carrying that all over the place and spreading their soul around, which is or some essence of them around. Or in the case where you're going into the ground and perhaps the worms consuming the body or going into the body, maybe they don't consume it, they decide to occupy it and then to make the person claw their way to the surface and then infest others with it, which is exactly what the vampire idea is in the classical sense, is that it has an insatiable hunger. And this really ties in a way to the blood. And it's very strange, I think. Back to the flukes real quick, that people, we do become, when we become ill or even when we are not, because a lot of times they are, like hibernating in a way and waiting for the right temperatures, waiting for the right, lack of nutrients or a plethora of certain types of nutrients that they need. And they'll even persuade you to consume more of this or less of that sustains them, that benefits them. It may not, like I say again, I don't think it necessarily means that they that individual, particle of virus or parasite or bacterium has an intelligence, but it has some slight intelligence that's enough to bring the rest of its family, so to speak, the legions, maybe something as huge as like the clouds you see in the sky in a way, which are these great ancient demons that then can all work as a funnel system where they communicate to each other through some type of communication, sometimes through the host itself. That's why I think it's possible that some can recognize that inside of another one, like another host. What's inside of one can recognize itself in another host, positive or negative, and relate to it. When you talk about things, it's just very suspicious that it could be the case. But there's something about blood that is really important. Like there's the old sacrifices of animals about the blood, and then with the human sacrifices about the blood. But of course, what would be carried in the blood is these, would be these. That's where they would be. But I think that, and I wonder, go ahead.
Just real quick, regarding the blood, I almost did a show on that tonight before this. So I had two different ideas, and I was like, okay, I got home from work, and I was like, okay, I got a couple ideas. We're going to be good. And I started to build those shows up just to kind of see where it leads, right? Because I want to get the best group of ideas. And then I saw this headline. I'm like, let me scan the news real fast before I do this and commit to one of these shows. And I found this article. I was like, oh God, this is it. But there's a blood one in Odinism and some other weird stuff in Celtic runes, and we'll get to that maybe not tomorrow, maybe or later this week. But there's a lot here in terms of, so you're bringing up the blood in terms of maybe not, let's say sacrifice is sort of a generic term, not the blood sacrifice as you would expect from the old ways and the dark ways and this type of stuff, but the blood sacrifice of passing on the pathogen. Okay, it's sort of and I don't want to make it holy or be blasphemous or anything, but sort of that the idea of the blood is exactly what passes on one thing from one host to the next. And so, of course, the vampire makes the most sense in this instance, because how else? Like they say in the vampire folklore, when you get bit, when you survive, you become a vampire. And that's exactly what's happening. It's that transfer of bodily fluid. Of course, it's the blood. It's not about anything else. It's about the blood. Sorry to ramble on. Go right ahead.
Yeah. it's about the blood, right? I mean, when you think about it, with the classic vampire tales, yes, of course, the vampire is going around and just feeding on people. It doesn't even have to feed off people just by their blood. A lot of times they're depicted that way, but they'll exhaust the prey. They'll feed off some type of life energy off of them. Sometimes it's through the blood, sometimes it's just through wearing them down. They're able to get at the energy somehow besides just the blood. But when they want to make another vampire, the vampire will be, novo vampire has to drink the blood of the vampire. So I mean, it is this kind of, and it's strange because I mean, what would provoke a person to do such a thing? And I think that it's weird about the werewolf too. This idea of like when you think about parasites and insects and things like that, and it coming out of the dirt, coming from the netherworld, coming from underground like that. When you think about the way you've seen like insects, how they will shed their husk in a way, it's really gross. Like the concept of like the caterpillars, that's not gross, but I mean the concept of other different types of insects and things like that, the way that they slough off. Kind of like reptilians, it's very similar, but I think it's very creepy in the armor and all of that. But when you look at a werewolf, and even from the movies, the way that they transform into the werewolf, it's like they're going through some type of painful, where if, I don't know how, but we have, I mean, it's true, somehow built into our genetic story. These tales and these warnings, it's not just the cynocephaly or all that. It cannot be, because that's a natural creature that people were saying was a type of species that was occupying the earth. The concept of the vampire, the concept of the werewolf, that these were not species. These were invasive. It's a different tale. And when you think about the werewolf and how the way that having that like a virus in a way, or like an illness of some sort, I mean, it's not even necessarily shape-shifting when you think about the classical, that they are afflicted. They're afflicted by something. And then they are transformed into like a beast, a monster of themselves that go out and ravenously, act like a wolf.
Yeah,
and the way that with the moon.
Go ahead.
Just with, like with the moon thing you were pointing out, I think that, think about like some of the plants and things like that, like nightshade plants. And there's been some speculation about how much of a role does the moonlight play in life on Earth itself? Not just to do with what we commonly think of, but it's shown that if you were to take moonlight away from plant life, it also won't germinate correctly in the dirt. So there's some type of way that the moon is affecting the soil. And so like that's why they in the old almanacs will and the old people will tell you that you plant at certain times during certain moon cycles, and sometimes they'd even do it in the middle of the night underneath that moon, so that I don't know what it had to do with the light of the moon, but I mean, I kind of think it's not about that. Just the idea that there are plants that it's as necessary to have sunlight, or actually the sunlight could have a negative effect, and they need to be in the moonlight or to be in shade all the time. And then there are organisms, of course, we know that sunlight has some type of effect on those organisms, sunlight and the bleaching of sunlight. But I think that the vampire concept and those organisms coming out of the dirt, coming out of the darkness where they had been, also in ancient dirt, like I say about those locations of where they suspected that strigoi or vampires might rise from. It's very akin to the potter's field concept, where you would bury certain people in certain locations because they were considered evil by their peers. And so they wouldn't be buried with respectable people in the cemetery, in the churchyard, or whatever. They'd be buried in specific spots because that's where they belonged, was the concept. Well, then you wonder about that dirt then there. Is there something about the dirt itself? Is there something about the earth there? Or does that evil manifest? Is evil not actually just an idea? Is it physical? Is it a physical force, a virus, or a type of yes? And is the virus a type of cloud entity, if you will, something like that?
Yeah, like a cloud entity of we are legions. I love how you said that. We are legion. Now here's a weird thing. So Hiker Emoji over on Rumble said this, and it triggered me when you were just speaking right now. The language of the parasite. Now, in that sense, as you're describing, if we are legion is the thing, and like I was talking to James, what if we could eventually fine-tune the actual AI? We're talking 100 years from now, or maybe not. Maybe it's exponential and it happens next week. We don't really know. But what if we could fine-tune, let's say, again, just theoretically speaking, the AI to sort of hook up to these ants that are infected by this, what's this thing called again? It's called the lancet liver fluke, which is a brain parasite. And maybe we can actually talk to the parasite within the host itself. So check this out. What do you? That's terrifying. What do you think it would say? What do you think we are legion within us would actually say if we could connect to it directly and communicate? And I'm going to tell you what I think. So just so you don't sound weird, I'm going to sound weirder than you, I'm pretty sure. Have you ever seen Independence Day? When well, I know you don't mind being weird, but I'm just saying, in Independence Day, when that alien kind of grabbed the Dr. Oaken, if you remember that, and had put him up against a window and was speaking, manipulating with its tentacles with his throat, and basically making him speak on behalf of the alien. And they asked the alien, as part of the host process of manipulating the host, what do you want from us? And the alien in the movie said, die. That's what I imagine.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, because they feed, isn't it terrifying? Because it fits into the classic prototype about demons, about vampires, about this concept. Because they do want the death, because they feed off of it. So for them, life is death. They live off of it. And then, it's a terrifying concept, but I mean, imagine if you have a host completely infected with bubonic plague. And then if they were to speak, like in the Green Mile, for example, like I don't want to go off into it, I guess. Have you seen that movie? And the woman in the movie, she has like a brain tumor or something like that, and she's cussing all the time and everything. And then the guy in the Green Mile, Stephen King, he like sucks the parasites out and blows it out like gnats, and then she's healed and no longer is, in pain and suffering. But she was hateful when she was under the influence of it, not just because of the pain, but it was as if the entity, like the disease itself, was causing this type of evil or something like that. There's things like that all the time.
Like within her, like screaming, die, 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 like within her, and she felt it and understood it. Yeah, hey, as you know, we're out of time. If you want to stay, you're definitely welcome to. You let me know.
Oh, no, just that, I do think that if we were to hear them speak, I think it would be horrifying, and it's crazy technology that they'd even want to hear it talk at all. But that's it. But have a great night.
Well said. You're the best. Give Jen a follow. Links in the description. TroubledMinds.org/friends. Follow Jen here at the Arcane Observer. Thank you very much for the phone call. More coming up on the way. Look, I don't know. No answers. What do you know about biology of the uncanny? Be right back. More Troubled Minds coming up. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Troubled Minds. I'm your host, Michael Strange. We're streaming on YouTube, Rockfin, Rumble, Twitter, and Twitch. We are broadcasting live on the Troubled Minds Radio Network. That's KUAP Digital Broadcasting. Tonight we're taking your calls as we discuss the idea of parasites. Yeah, it's creepy. It's creepy. As above, so below, right? But what if so below is we are legion, and legion itself is actually a parasitic cloud of eternal hate? You tell me. In a fascinating fusion of folklore and biology, the legendary creatures that have haunted our collective imagination, vampires, werewolves, and even lesser-known cryptids, could be reimagined as hosts in complex parasitic relationships. Does that seem too wild for you? Look, basically this show is built on, is this too wild or is this not? Okay, that's really we're really pressing what do they call it? What's the term? Pushing the envelope here, and that's the idea. That's why, literally why I come back night after night, because I think it's important to think of new. Well, I don't even know these concepts are new, to be honest. Because look, if I read 10 million books, I'd be like, oh, somebody said this back in 1963 type of crap. Okay, but look, I don't have that amount of time. But you know what I do have time for? This. And time for meeting new people and talking about ideas with amazing people out there. So thank you so much for the calls tonight and the ideas. And just real quick to double back on that, the Gen thing we were talking about. Like, imagine if you could tune in to the hive mind. Like, I think also, as I brought up, we are legion. Jen said that, but I brought up Independence Day with the manipulation of the vocal cords with the aliens and the tentacles. If you've seen that movie, imagine if something similar could happen and you could speak to the actual manipulation device within the host organism. Now, there's a weird part here that kind of goes to this. And it's been a good year plus since I've seen the series. But if anybody's ever seen this Stargate series, Stargate SG-1, anybody watch that? Well, they have these actual entities known as the Goa'uld, they call them. And they are symbiotes. They're actual, like, little, like, about this big, I don't know, foot long or something. And they are bizarre creatures that basically cannot survive. No, that's not true. They can survive, but they're aquatic in nature and they're sort of stuck into that realm. And so to make them not a water elemental, see what I did there, they have to be implanted into the dirt, the clay, like Jen was describing, the homunculus, the golem of sorts, which is us, which is the people, which is the land dwellers, the landlubbers, as it were. And so what they do is they put these like foot-long, like nasty little things into like, they just jump down your throat and they attach themselves to your spine. And then they start controlling the host entity, which is a human, because I've ever seen Stargate SG-1. If you haven't seen Stargate SG-1, like I was late. I missed this. This was like what early, mid-90s sci-fi after the X-Files. And it was, or maybe around the same time-ish. And like at the time I was like, MacGyver, like the guy's cool, fine, because it had Richard Dean Anderson, the MacGyver. But also that idea of the symbiote controlling the host mechanism, which is the person. And so when this thing went down the throat, again, everybody settled down. It was actually an entity, like this entity that would attach itself to the spine and be able to control the person. And then their eyes would glow and they would be somebody else. And the person within would be suppressed entirely. They'd still be alive. They would be dominated by the entity itself, the symbiote. Now, look, if that doesn't terrify the crap out of you, I don't know what does. But here's the point of me bringing all of that up. It doesn't have to be a foot-long, terrifying little reptilian aquatic monster. What if we're being manipulated by We Are Legion? What if it's already happening? What if we are so far buried within a system that we cannot measure it and we cannot quantify it? You get what I'm saying? And we're all controlled to every degree. Shout out Kimball, down to the granular level. But that was a smart thing he said. I think, I don't like it. I totally don't like it. I like to believe I have free will. I like to believe that the choices I make are me. Maybe they're not. Maybe it's the legion within. What do you guys think? Horrific. 702-957-1037. Click the Discord link, troubledminds.org, and we'll put you on the show. It's as easy as that. A lot of weird stuff. I tell you what. And notice how a lot of these themes, too, are circular. The Ouroboros situation. The snake eating his tail, which again, back to the reptiles and, the Legion and all the weird stuff, okay? But also back to the days of yore. When we talk about folklore, and we talk about vampires, and we talk about werewolves, do you think it is possible that maybe there's an actual entity out there? And when I say entity, I don't mean mammal. I don't mean alien. Well, maybe alien, but let's say a pathogen of sorts. You've seen X-Files and the Black Goo? Maybe something like that. What if that was here as part of that von Neumann probe from someplace else a million years ago and is controlling and reporting everything? Wouldn't that explain the Watchers? Wouldn't that explain the Archons? Wouldn't that explain a lot? A lot. And am I saying that's real? Of course not. It's absurd to think that. But it's a fascinating idea. Anyway, back to this. Now, so the weird part regarding this, so Jen brought up the blood and how this is part of sort of that pact, that the pact of if this legion is within us, it is because of the blood, or very much part of it, like a huge part of this. Because look, what better way to get sick from somebody that's also sick than to, have blood contact, right? That's been a thing forever. Well, look at this. So I was brainstorming ideas here with the AI. And by the way, I'd rather hear from you. 702-957-1037. Click the Discord link at troubleminds.org. But I got tons of stuff to talk about, of course, because I come prepared. Even though, never mind. I digress. I previously, so how about this? A bloodlust parasite to create a vampire. Okay, think about this. A previously unknown protozoan infects the human host, affecting neural pathways that control hunger and appetite. The infected individual develops an insatiable craving for blood, much like the traditional vampire's thirst. This protozoan could require specific nutrients found only in human blood, not to survive, but to reproduce. You see what's going on here? How about this? Where we talked about sunlight aversion in this other instance. What about this? A fungus takes over the host's skin cells, making them hypersensitive to UV radiation, that's ultraviolet. This would explain the vampire folklore of being averse to sunlight. The fungus could spread through spores released only in low light conditions, thus benefiting from the host's newfound nocturnal style. You see what's going on here? This is the type of stuff that could give you nightmares forever and ever. We're talking about the old ones. We're talking about Lovecraft. We're talking about Cthulhu. Except it's not an amorphous mass bigger than you could ever imagine. It's an amorphous mass. It's the cloud, as Jen described. It is the cloud of entities, the hive mind that is within you, that's demanding from you what it needs and what it expects to survive by itself. Not by itself, of course, with your help, rather. Back to this. Now we'll skip that one. That's not so very smart. Mind control pheromones. Listen to this. Vampires, of course, are known to be able to control other people's minds. Check this out. The infected host, and these are just ideas, the infected host emits pheromones that make them highly attractive to others, explaining the vampire's supposed power of seduction. The pheromones could serve to attract new potential hosts, ensuring the parasite's life cycle continues. Now, here's the wild part about that. If you guys have ever read Anne Rice, the vampire seeking prey didn't need to hunt. They would walk up to a party, a raging, or some kegger, some rager, and they'd stand outside in the darkness, waiting, knowing full well they would get a volunteer to step outside of that party and walk knowingly and lovingly into their arms. And look, I don't do Anne Rice justice. I do my best. But Anne Rice is incredible. Go read. If you've never read any Anne Rice whatsoever, skip the interview with the vampire and just read The Vampire Lestat. You burn through it in like a week. If you read kind of, medium pace. It's incredibly good. And this is the type of stuff because they're seeking something. They're seeking back to the blood, back to We Are Legion, back to the idea of, being controlled. What else? What about this? How about this one? Garlic aversion. We could explain this through this sort of biology in terms of how this fits or doesn't. Listen to this. A digestive parasite makes it impossible for the infected human to consume garlic, as it interferes with the parasite's life cycle. This aligns with the folklore that vampires cannot tolerate garlic. And this is the weird type of crap that starts to sort of make some sense in terms of the folklore, because we don't know where that idea really comes from. There's some theories, etc. But if we're talking about the first vampire was back to the Egyptian Empire in 5000 BC or something. Bastet, look it up, Bastet. It does make me wonder if something like this is in play. So maybe garlic and these natural remedies that we've talked about forever are not just, as Jen said, saging, smudging, the smoke. It keeps the insects at bay. Not the insects, but let's say these smaller parasites that we cannot see with the human eye. And think about this too. 5,000 years ago, did they know anything about this? Did they know there were parasites let's say symbiotic entities within our gut, the gut biome? Did they know these things? Did they know that we were full of life that was not human life, non-human intelligence even? I don't know. But it sure seems like, to me, like I said, the splinter in my mind, and clearly the splinter in your mind, it's late in the night and you're still here, is there something happening that we can't quite quantify? That's what this is always about. Well, let's see, some other stuff. Garlic aversion was good. Let's see. And this is how I do shows, by the way. If you guys are interested, I'll come up with the seed idea. I'll drop it into the AI, which is ChatGPT. I'll tell it, okay, so in this regard, brainstorm some ideas based on the information I gave you, and take it this direction. And it'll do it. And it'll pop out, 6 to 12 ideas. And sometimes they're garbage. And that's where the human filter comes in. That's where my experience comes in. That's where I'm like reading some of this. I'm like, nah, shut up. This is dumb. Give me some more. It'll do it. In any case, just like I said, I got a website. We're going to set this up. It's called the synchromystic.net. It's live right now, but there's nothing up there. But we're gonna put some of this stuff up there and teach you guys how to do this if you want to. And I don't mean to like brainstorm to build podcasts or books or what. You could totally do that. And so if you're a writer or a creative type or whatever, there's brainstorming ideas is a way to expand our minds, and that's a good thing. And so whatever that looks like in the long term, fine. But I will teach you guys how to do this. I'm going to stay locked into this AI game until Skynet comes and takes all of us over. But I will be able to teach you. I'm putting some stuff together to show you exactly how this works. And you can ask James Salcedo, a good friend of mine, and we've been collaborating for a long time now, especially with the AI stuff in the last 6, 8, 10 months. And he's said it himself to me a lot. He said it here on the show that sort of working with the AI as a creative mechanism has exploded his productivity and saving precious time on his eyes. As you know, he's struggling with that in a lot of ways. Wearing a blindfold because he's got massive light sensitivity. In any case, there's a lot of good things that come with this. So blah blah. I digress. Now back to this thing. Let's see. How about this? This is a little weird. Do you want to get paranormal with this a sec? And this is, again, maybe we do, if you guys are feeling this, maybe we do a part 2 of this and we do the werewolf entirely tomorrow, because we barely touched that. You let me know in the chat, send me emails, whatever, do the thing. Yeah, we're good. You call in 702-957-1037. Love to hear your thoughts. Here's the deal. Listen to this. So, fear of holy symbols. How would you explain that through a parasitic infestation that creates a vampire out of a human host? Listen to this. A psychological parasite affects the host's perception and induces extreme stress or fear when confronted with specific shapes or symbols, explaining the vampire's fear of crosses or holy water. This could be a mechanism to prevent the host from entering places that have been traditionally considered safe, where the parasite might be at risk. Now, here's a turn everything on its head. Again, if you're religious, earmuffs, cover your ears for a moment. What if religion itself and the idea of a greater power is nonsense? Just theory crafted. However, our current religious cycles, which are all very similar, not identical, of course, and there's nuance, and I understand. Things are complicated. But we have a lot of the same sort of yin-yang type stuff, the duality of creation type stuff, the Trinity type stuff. There's a lot, okay? But imagine if all of that was not actually built on the true idea of divinity. However, it was manipulated from within us through this folklore type stuff, meaning exactly like the fear of holy symbols. That type of thing. You get it? It's a bit of a stretch, but I do wonder if we're talking about like the inversion of the way the world works. I always talk about the upside down. And like, I'm not talking about the devil. I'm not talking about this type of stuff. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the idea of the yin and yang and how this fits together. And you notice everything is cyclical. Like I said, the Ouroboros, the snake eating his tail, and the rest of this. But notice, if we're being manipulated from within, we are part of a larger system. And that larger system we cannot quantify because we're locked within it. Now imagine if you're the pathogen within us, the actual parasite within. How would that parasite quantify what we are? Are we, to that parasite, an individual universe? You get my meaning? So think about that. We're locked into a larger system. We're talking fractals now. And our larger system, as far as we're aware, is the universe. Right? It's endless in all ways. But think about this. If you're an actual parasite, a microscopic virus-style parasite within a human host, wouldn't it seem at scale that you were in an infinite space? You get my meaning? I don't know. Like I said, just ideas coming to me as we're kind of riffing here, but there's a lot to this. We can go deep into this. Let's see what else. How about the transference through biting in the blood, as Jen was talking about? The parasite can only move to a new host through an exchange of saliva and blood, thereby necessitating the biting aspect of vampire folklore. The bite could inject a cocktail of parasitic larvae and enzymes that begin to alter the new host immediately. Like I said, the most fascinating thing about all of this to me is that this stuff could exist and be laying dormant somewhere and waiting. And think about it. We've had a ton of stuff. The Ice Age, like the last 10,000 years has been a mighty wild place here on Earth. And we continue to make it so. Especially the last 100 years. 2 world wars in 100 years. That's pretty solid. Millions upon millions. Hundreds of millions of people dead. Not just from war, but from tyranny. Telling you, it's a lot here. There's a lot here, and short of getting into global geopolitics this late in the night, I think it's important to consider that we don't know crap about anything, and that's why they don't want me talking. That's why they don't want you talking. That's why they don't want us talking to each other, because they've put so. And again, Mike, who is they? I can hear the doubters and the haters now. Look, 1, conceptual thought, no truth. 2, they are the elites. They are the control mechanisms in place trying to keep us in check, believing a consensus reality that is not real. Because so let me postulate this, and we'll do a show on this. I don't know when, like when the right time hits. I think this is the thing with Troubled Minds, is we have a way with our timing. And it doesn't, these things are already in me. These questions and ideas are already in you as well. However, the timing seems to be instrumental in many things. And so when something hits the news cycle that brings those ideas out of me, that's when we talk about them. Look, I'm not, like I always say, I'm only channeling myself. And I'm not special. I'm just like you, just like everybody else, and that we're all special. You get it? So I don't know. Just food for thought. Again, talked a little bit last night about, giving up on yourself. Don't ever. You will regret the time you wasted. Keep punching, keep thinking, keep dreaming. And from that U2 song last night, I want to point this out too at the end. It had the most troubled minds line at the end of that song. And it said, I'll pull it up in a sec, hold on. Because we'll end with this. This will be the J-tro. Shout out Jay. It's been a minute because he's been going to bed earlier, I think. But we got a J-tro for you tonight with a Easter egg tie-in from last night as part of that show. But before we do that, I'm going to look this up real quick. We got James Salcedo, the paranormal expert at Troubled Minds, back on. What's up, my friend? Let me kill your echo. I got your echo right here. Make sure everything's kosher. Glad I looked. What's up, my man? Welcome back. What you got to add here? This is weird, right? This is super weird.
Yeah. So, and funny enough, it all kind of ties to what you were just talking about. For anyone that knows Stephen King, of course, I'm a big Stephen King fan. Excuse me. In his book, Salem's Lot, that is a book about vampires, of course. And of course, there is a I forget if it's a priest or not. He's the head of a church in Salem's Lot. And he does end up facing the main vampire in the book, Barlow. His name is Callahan. And so they end up facing off in a house. And of course, Callahan has been going through sort of a back and forth crisis of faith on and off for years. But he does have some of his symbols with him. And they actually glow at first when he brings them out and points them at Barlow. And it does make Barlow go back for a minute. But then the glow fades away. And Barlow basically says that it's because Callahan's faith went away. Now, I'm just saying this is fiction. I'm not saying any of this is real or not real. Just a possible connection to this whole story here. Where what if it's some kind of energy that gives off, that kind of thought gives off, that really did force Barlow back. And then once Callahan lost it, it didn't work on Barlow anymore. And so maybe that's the sort of the root to the whole the connection with all the items and the relics and the symbolism, where sometimes it works, but also in plenty of other stories of experiences people have, sometimes it doesn't. And maybe you could apply that to this whole thing that we've been talking about all night.
I think so too. Quick poll in the chat. Anybody want part 2 of this? Let me know. Maybe we kick it down the road and do a part 2 maybe next week on the same day or something. But let me know if you want more of this, because we could do an entire other thing. We did vampires mostly tonight, but we could do an entire other business with this and take it to some of these other aspects with lycanthropy and of course werewolves. But yeah, brilliant, James. As always, look, I think that's the thing. I think to write off fiction as part of these human concepts is foolish. Because, of course, fiction, we talk about, comes from the muses. It comes from the inspiration of the human condition. So to write off fiction is like nonsensical and unworthy of ideas and discussion to me is, again, it's sort of like punching from within the system, expecting to measure the system without, which makes no damn sense. We're all here together in the same boat, so everything plays to me, and that's why we do this, and that's why we talk about this. James, you're the best. I appreciate it very much. As you know, we're just about out of time. I'm going to go a little bit late anyway, but what else you got? Quick take, if you got it, and then if you want to stay a little bit, let me know.
I think let's just stay and see what else comes up.
Stay right there. You're the best. James Salcedo Paranormal, troubledminds.org/friends. Give him a follow. Look, as we finish this, we will do a J-tro. I'm going to do it right now on the radio because the radio guys get shafted so much because we kind of bounce off. Look at this. The J-tro for tonight reads exactly like this, and this is from the U2 song that happened last night as part of the entire thing. And if your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough. That's from the song Atomic City by U2, which was part of last night. You guys are the best. Thanks for hanging out on the radio. We'll catch you soon. Remember, every minute you listen to the radio station does help us, and it's a massive thing here. So thank you for that. I see you guys out there. And there we go. Let's roll it, dip it, and you're amazing. We'll talk to you soon. Have a great night. All right. And so what we're going to do is go just a little bit longer here, because this was the important part I wanted to point out. Oops, that was terrible. That was wow, wrong button, Mike. But there you go. That's what happens when you push the wrong button. But think about that. And this is the thing that resonates incredibly with me. Straight from the U2 Atomic City lyrics from last night. Again, right there. Like it's obviously been on my mind quite a bit. The whole sync storm we talked about last night, does it mean something? What does this look like? I don't know. But I think this line is so pertinent in terms of what Troubled Minds is. This sort of encapsulates not exactly, let's say mostly in the periphery of what we do. Because of course we've only got two eyes unless you count your third eye. But if your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough. You get it? And if the ideas don't scare you, they're not big enough. That's why I'm here. I'm not here to scare me. I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to consider things that possibly have never been considered before. And I'm not fooling myself in the sense that I think that everything I say is a novel thought. Of course not. We're always standing on the shoulders of giants. However, maybe that novel collaboration is something sublime indeed. Anything on that, James?
Well, just to say that in another book where Callahan shows up in Stephen King's multiverse, he does get his energy back, his abilities back. You could say. So it does happen.
It happens. Hey, the weird stuff in the possibilities of the multiverse, they do happen. I kind of wonder sometimes, and I don't really put too much thought to it because I'm far too busy, and you guys are too, that I wonder what the other Michael Stranges are doing in the multiverse. You ever wonder that, James, about yourself?
Yeah, I think there's probably more than a few of me that are just doing what I was doing a few years ago, just sitting around and writing a little bit here and there, but mostly not doing much of anything. And tell you what, that got old after a while.
It's old. Everywhere, everybody belongs somewhere, and that's what this is all about. Like I said, type in the chat, do the thing, send me emails at troublemindsradio@gmail. Shout out to last night Lisa from Waking God's Child sent me a nice email on you can do it too. Like I said, if you show feedback, if you just want to say thank you, whatever. If you want to tell me to fuck off, that's fine too. I'll probably just block you and never read your email again because I don't got time for that type of stuff. But if you have back to the golden rule, if you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all. And why are you here into the third hour listening to me in this if you don't have anything nice to say? It's bizarre. But in any case, send me an email, troublemindsradio@gmail. I will answer you. I've answered everybody who sent me an email, and unless of course you're trying to sell me something, then I'm not sure I'm answering you. Even funny enough, somebody sent me an email a couple of days ago and they're trying to sell me something, and then I sent them an email back. I was like, hey, this is a lousy cold open, couldn't you do better? And then it bounced, and so I couldn't even contact them anyway because it was a bad email address. I was like, nice sales technique, bro. I can't even say here's my money. Dear God. That's the internet for you. What's up? So Jason over there on Rockfin says definitely part 2. Would love to see this. Okay, so what I'll probably do is I'll put this in my back pocket and work this into as we sort of massage ourselves into the Halloween sphere of the next 6 weeks. We'll recircle maybe next week, and we'll talk about this in the framework of some different things, because of course there's the chat, you guys are crazy hilarious. I mean, I don't mean crazy in the bad way, I mean crazy in the good way. But yeah, there's some other things that we never got to. And go read the write-up, by the way. So if you want to like a massive cheat sheet, by the way, And if your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough. But back to the massive cheat sheet. It's going to be right here. Links in the description. And you can find, no shit, it's probably like 3,500 words. Hey, James, how much is a short book? How many words? Are we 30,000 words as a short book? Would you know?
There's a lot of answers to that, but I think that might be a little bit too short for a short book.
Okay, that's what I'm asking. So what, 50,000, 70,000?
I would say at least 30. Yeah.
Okay, so at least 30. So 30 is like the bottom end of like a book novella type of thing. Gotcha.
I think so.
So we're talking probably. The reason I'm asking is because I could probably peel out a book in an afternoon with with what I'm doing here. So I'm kind of considering. I don't know. In any case, like I said, garbage in, garbage out, and go ahead and tell AI to write you a story about a time traveling dog, and you'll get what you ask for. But also, if you've spent a lot of time training the thing, go read the write up and see if tonight is ridiculous and dumb and disjointed, and get back to me. I'm just saying. You into this type of stuff? Because I could probably do a lot of this type of stuff. In any case, let's roll it. Let's get the hell out of here. There's a lot happening, and like I said, by the way, as many of you know, many of you don't know, I did get a new job because some other things dried up I was doing as usual, like, life changes, and the new job is actually really cool. It's really cool. Like it's one of those, like, I'm very good at it. I'm obviously overqualified because I'm amazeballs, but y'all know that. Just let me massage my ego for a moment. And it's so chill. It's so chill. Like throughout the day, I can literally be setting up Troubled Mind shows. Like I have enough downtime. I mean, jobs in the downtime. I forgot what it was like. But anyway, so like the only thing is that it's like the burning the candle at both ends, because you wake up early, you stay up late, you working the entire time, and making time for human things like eating and pooping, not to be crude, but you know what I mean, like that. But when you're constantly busy, that's the type of stuff where you start to struggle. So if I crap standing here, you'll understand. I'm just kidding, of course. But anything to add to eating and pooping, James? I'm not watching the video. Okay, there you go. Well, good thing the video's like above my armpits, basically.
That too.
So if you hear me kick a bucket when I'm shuffling around, you'll know what's going on. I'm just kidding. But anyway, you get the idea. So thanks for being part of this. Thanks for all the amazing calls tonight, and thanks for understanding that even the great Michael Strange and even the great James Salcedo, we have our human moments. As by the way, so do you. So keep being the best human you can be, and keep doing the things that, as Mark Twain famously said, I can't remember. If you find yourself in the majority, it's time to stop and reflect. I think that's what he said. Is that pretty good from memory? Does that resonate, James?
That seems accurate.
Close enough, anyway. The sentiment is there. As always, like I said, this is not about me. This is about us. Thanks to all the amazing people that make this work, including, of course, you love him, James Salcedo. Search it, SALSIDO, Space Paranormal. Do the thing. He's links in the description, troubledminds.org/friends. Follow him in all the places. Like I said, if you haven't at this point, you're hurting my feelings, because James is the glue of this show, and he's such a dear friend and such a good man. Please. As we finish this, if you want to help Troubled Minds directly, you know what to do. There's a number of ways. We're going to set up some other ways too. I was given wise counsel recently in that, hey Mike, if you don't give them like a place to actually donate if they want to, people won't, because there's no easy way to do it, because we've been demonetized on YouTube, etc., so on. So I'm going to set something up, and we'll have like a banner running or whatever. But like I said, this is not about money and extorting people, this type of thing. But I do understand and realize that there are a lot of you out there that listen and appreciate what we're doing, because it's not me, it's us, and it is a lot of work that goes into this. So it is basically, as anything is sort of a labor of love, but you're still spending your time doing it. So I hope you understand by me describing those things. Thank you to all the people who have supported the show up to this point. If you want to, again, buy hats, shirts, troublefans.com. You will not find Michael Strange in a hot tub. You will find the hottest Troubled Minds merchandise. There you go. The best value is to sub up on Rockfin directly. Just go to the links in the description. You have to click. Basically, if you sub up to Rockfin, like sort of without clicking Troubled Minds, it doesn't work. You got to click on Troubled Minds, sub up, but you get all of the content, all of the premium content on all of Rockfin for one monthly cost. It's the best way to do it, or you can tip over there. Also, Rumble works as well. Buy me a coffee, Patreon, all that stuff, whatever. Like I said, the other ways, look, of course, this is not about money. And if you, like I said, but the most important thing here is thank you for spending your time and energy with all of us, because ideas matter, concepts matter, and that's that. If you want to help Troubled Minds and don't want to spend money, spread the word. Let people know on Facebook, Reddit, Twitter, X, whatever you're using out there. Just retweet the shows. Let people know a conversation's happening. But we're not going to talk about who to vote for, and we're going to talk about amazing ideas. And the best way, the easiest way is to listen to the podcast feed. After 5.5 years of Troubled Minds, over 730 episodes, an unbelievable amount of amazing conversations you cannot even imagine, because we are all over the place on a nightly basis. Go check it out. Limited commercial interruption. Please let those commercials run if you're listening to us on Spotify or iTunes or any of those places. It does matter if you skip them. We don't get paid. So please just let them run. It's like 90 seconds for every 25 minutes of stuff. So there you go. Anyway, as we finish, I don't want to be presumptive, James, and you don't have to do it. You could tell me to shut up. You want to do it? You want to do it?
I can do it.
Okay, all right. Go right ahead, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, cryptids, reptilians, aliens, etc., I present to you my good friend, James Salcedo.
Be sure, be strong, be true.
Thank you for listening. From our Troubled Minds to yours, have a great night. God willing, we'll see you tomorrow. Like I said, wake up tomorrow and be the best you that you can be. I'm going to do it. James is going to do it. Let's make this the new thing and not be scared of the propaganda nonsense. You're all amazing. Thanks for making us part of your night, and we'll see you soon.